All right, Kevin Knodell. It's been a minute. You're here in New Hampshire, all the way from Hawaii, where you're a reporter for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. You've been around the world in your reporting ventures, from the Middle East to East Asia, all over the Pacific, across the United States. You're an award-winning journalist. And we did a little bit of work together when in the Coffee or Die days, with you submitting some really amazing. One of my favorite essays of all time was that road trip Syria piece that you did. It's just one of my all-time favorite pieces. But since those days, you did a stint with Civil Beat. You did what would you call that?
It was through report,
like a fellowship.
It was a Report for America stint.
Okay.
They place journalists into newsrooms to tackle issues that aren't getting the proper coverage or enough, and that made me at that point one of three military reporters on the island. The other, Wyatt Olson at Stars and Stripes, and William Cole at the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. But then he retired, and I moved over to the Star-Advertiser and filled in for him.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's what a great opportunity to be sent out to Hawaii there on that, and now you've made it home. Originally grew up in Washington, though.
Portland, Oregon.
Gotcha. And I guess one of the things that we're going to talk about today is water quality. Specifically in Hawaii, but this is something that I believe should have, most people have heard about water quality in Flint, Michigan, and what happened there. I'm not as educated on this as you, but I think it's fair to say that it's at least on the same level of Catastrophe, right? And can you give us a breakdown of what exactly is going on at Red Hill and in Hawaii with water quality? Can you give us the kind of the overarching?
Well, in terms of, this will be, I think, a lot of a history lesson, because a lot has changed. But the important background. So Red Hill, or the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility, is a World War II era Navy facility. It was built in what is known, through in the indigenous language as Kapukaki, a mountain kind of known as Red Hill, and it was built underground so that the Japanese couldn't hit it. During the lead up to the hostilities, it was under construction. Interestingly enough, it actually wasn't finished at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack, and inexplicably, the Japanese strike force opted not to make the fuel a target for some reason and focused mostly on the battleships. Probably could have been a real problem if they had hit the fuel reserves. Would have set things back a lot in the days after, and we'll probably get back into that a little bit more. Why on this fuel and the redistribution of it. But yeah, very old, very large facility. It was built to store up to 250 million gallons of fuel. By keeping it up there, what it was able to do is it was connected by a pipeline system to Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, so they could feed fuel from the mountain down there, and they could do it without needing to pump it because it was already up there. So they would just open a slot and it would go down the pipe and get where they wanted it to be. So nobody disputes that this is like an engineering marvel. The problem with it, and this was known at the time, is that Kapukaki, that mountain, and where they put it, they built that facility and stored the U.S. military's strategic fuel reserve 100 feet over the sole source aquifer that most of the island of Oahu relies on for clean drinking water and, bathing and anything you might be using water for.
And that's a problem.
Yeah, you'd think.
And the plot thickens from there, because there was a little bit of a cover up that was involved.
Well, yeah. I mean, depending on when you want to start, start the story. It was built and it was used, throughout the Cold War. Hawaii is we'll probably get to this more, a very strategically important place for the United States. The United States did not annex Hawaii because they liked the beaches. That's not the main interest, but throughout the years, and we kind of know, we don't know how much, but we know that fuel that was up there has leaked at various points. in 2014, there was, kind of a major scandal when there was a big leak from one of the tanks.
Okay.
And, they had to have, there was a federal consent decree. They had to affirm that they were making upgrades. But the Navy's position throughout all this was that the facility is strategically vital, but it's also, despite its age, up to date, it's state of the art, and perfectly safe, and there was nothing for anybody to worry
Have
about.
they literally said state of the art
At various points that
Really?
that they had made upgrades, because like even though the facility itself is old, that they had been using the best technology to keep it up to date. We'll get to that. That was not always true, but. Yeah, that sets the stage for what happens, later. And yeah, one of my colleagues at Honolulu Civil Beat got kind of a really good scoop. So right around the time when I was making the changeover, Christina Jedra at Honolulu Civil Beat had gotten some leaked correspondence that basically said that there had been leaks on the pipeline, in Pearl Harbor, and problems along the pipeline that certain officials were trying to keep away from state officials, trying not to let them know that these things were here and it was, to quote, political concerns was what was quoted in these emails, because they were trying to get permits renewed, and if the state knew that, that would be a problem, because the pipelines, Red Hill is on federal, Navy land and the bases, but you've got miles of pipeline that's going through there. And also Pearl Harbor itself, that water, that's ocean water that is kind of, but that becomes a common space, and it affects the ecosystem and the fish that people might be
eating.
Anything that gets into the ocean is an issue. So those came out, getting the timeline so we get it straight. Before that, it'd been known that in May of 2021 there was sorry,
you're good.
Yeah, in May of 2021 there was a leak that had been reported. They'd acknowledged it, that there was a leak at the facility from one of the tanks, and they said that they had captured all the fuel and that there was nothing to worry about. What we would later learn through internal investigations after things went bad is that that's not quite what happened. There was actually a bunch of fuel that was not accounted for, but they assumed that it had been captured and fed back. And I don't remember the exact technical things. Go back and read the reporting that we actually wrote. You'll see it. But where it had actually gone is it had gone into the fire suppression system. And it had gone down lower into the facility, close to where the Red Hill water well is, which we talked about this already, but can't be stressed enough. The Red Hill water well is the main water for the Navy's water system that supports military communities in Pearl Harbor, Hickam Airfield, the areas around that, and some Army housing areas nearby.
How many service members plus, how many people does that affect?
Oh, that water system, about 97,000 people used that water system.
Gotcha.
And I should add that also includes areas that, during the Cold War, were military housing areas, but have since, through repositioning, have been turned into civilian housing. So there were civilians on the Navy waterline. But by in November, then, as that fuel had been sitting there, and as Christina's reporting kind of got people already looking at this, having people go hey, what's going on here? And then also Sophie Koch, who I worked with at the Star-Advertiser, also got some emails leaked to her about concerns about sagging pipes and issues that were brought up by some of the field directors, that like some of the uniformed people saying like, hey, this seems not good. It seems like we should do something about it. This looks unsafe. So after these are starting to come up, as people are already kind of watching it a little bit more, people who are living around Red Hill start and on the Navy waterline start reporting that their that their water is starting to smell like gasoline and starting to smell like chemicals, and that they've been, smelling things nearby. What we know, and as video has shown us since then, one of the pipes on the fire suppression burst and let out a mixture of jet fuel and water that flooded one of the underground tunnels. And this tunnel is right next to the Red Hill water well, which is co-located with all of the fuel, which, there's a lot to say about the decision to have done that.
Yeah.
And what we also later learned is that a lot of people who were in charge of like these facilities, because they didn't go to the Red Hill facility regularly, were unaware of that fact. They were unaware that their fuel, like they knew that these things were close, but they themselves did not know how closely co-located these things are. But this fuel that gets out into this hallway, they seal things up and they think, nah, we got it. No need to cause any alarm. But in reality, it had gotten into the water well in pretty significant amounts. Gets out into the water system, starts making its way through. People start reporting getting sick. They start realizing that that they have a problem, so they shut down the Red Hill facility.
What were those early sort of warning signs? Like, were people showing up in ERs nauseous, or
some?
I mean, could you light a match under your sink and the water starts on fire?
I don't remember if I know anybody who did the match test. Like you see kind of around those areas with fracking. I think some people had that, but like a sheen on the water. But like the biggest thing mostly was that it smelled wrong. But yeah, like people's pets started getting weird. Like dogs would go up to the water bowl and go like, like I don't want that. That smells wrong. Or they would get it, or they would drink it and they'd get sick. People started getting sick, and it was a range of things. Yeah, there were people who did go to the ER. And also like some officials would dispute this, but as it went through the system and reached new neighborhoods, that was when people started getting sick in different areas. Like the worst case that I heard in terms of somebody was a guy, his son took a shower, and he said that he had to take him to the ER because he like both brushed his teeth and took a shower, but then as it kind of set in, like his mouth was bleeding and like
wow,
rashing up, and he has no idea what, like there's no reason why this should be happening. No, like people having gastrointestinal problems, a lot of kids taking baths, like bath time, and like kind of like, ooh, like,
yeah, you're just sitting in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't, there were a lot of similar symptoms, like different people, it manifested in different ways, but like different groups, I would say, like the people who ended up having gastro problems, the people who ended up having skin problems, or like neurological things, like a lot of different things. And a big part of what makes this hard is because, and one of the things that they've countered, and that like there was a lawsuit, and they said that the government's argument when they were kind of fighting back on lessening the compensation was that none of the symptoms reported can be scientifically linked to jet fuel exposure, but that's also because
how many studies out there are there?
Right. That's kind of one of the things here. Like, no, and that like, this is kind of, this is a new frontier. Like anybody, like everybody who was involved in a certain sort of way was an unwilling subject in kind of a science experiment. And
here's what jet fuel does when it's in your water.
Right. And yeah, this is what happens when your daughter gets a belly full of
JP5 or whatever.
Yeah, it was JP5. JP5 or JP6, I think it was JP5, but one of these, and because the Red Hill facility also had that facility had jet fuel, it had marine diesel, it had the different tanks had different kinds of fuel. There's so many different kinds of fuel that all these different machines use.
Certainly.
But anyway, that's kind of setting the stage for what happened. It gets in the water, people get sick, and the state of Hawaii, the state health department puts out an advisory notice on the water. The Navy initially asked them, please rescind that. Like, the water is safe.
What year is this that they put out the advisory that the Navy then asked them to rescind?
Oh no, this is when people are getting sick.
Okay.
This is in like this is right after like people are starting to feel like this is, I think, still late November or like right the beginning of December. No, I think December 3rd is when they retracted and said no. Okay, state was right.
2021.
All of this is, we're still all talking 20.
Yeah.
We are talking days and weeks within each other of like, once it gets in, once this is happening. When it got into the water, people the first week was when people started noticing this smells weird. I'm sick. My pets are acting weird. Like this is happening very, very, very fast. Everybody's trying to catch up. Navy's trying to catch up. The state is trying to catch up. Board of Water Supply is trying to catch up. We, as journalists, are trying to catch up. We have suspicions about what might have happened, but we don't really know. And I mean, some of these cases were not always people lying. Like,
well, and you're trying to become a environmental reporter overnight.
Right,
learn what these things are. I mean, you've been talking about ISIS in Syria for most of your career, and you jump into this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, I'm talking chemical compounds and water supply systems and a little bit outside of your...
I mean, I had written one or two Red Hill stories or Red Hill adjacent stuff before this. So it wasn't like I knew nothing, but yeah, I like all these like water, like when they're giving us like these water reports, how to read them. And also like, is the testing like, you have to ask like, how are they tested? All of this. And like, yeah, I'm learning a lot more stuff about environmental reporting. Like I dipped my toes in it a little bit, but I was pushed in the water because this was like an important thing for me on this. Like I had been working at Civil Beat for a year and a half. I took over Will Cole's job. My first day was November 11th. So when I say that like this happened in November, like I had been on the job for maybe a week and a half when suddenly the entire shift of scope of what we were doing and what we were focused on changed completely. And it was all hands on deck. It was me. It was other reporters, like people who were doing environmental stuff, people who were on the city beat, and all of us just trying to put it all together and find out what's happening. It was like it was a 24-hour news cycle with things changing rapidly for weeks.
I just, the hard thing for me to wrap my head around is jumping into the middle of this while you're still in the process of moving to Hawaii, working at a new paper, learning who you work with, who your new boss is, who your fellow reporters are. And then this thing that is a very, it's very consequential reporting because people are actively getting sick, and there's just, yeah, you think about the kids, again, as a parent and stuff. I'm thinking, gosh, you're sitting there in your bathroom at home, giving your 4-year-old a bath or something like that. And then you notice them getting sick, and just that worry that would come across from that. And you've got no sort of source of official information. The only thing that you may have is these reports coming from guys like you initially. I just, the sense of urgency that must have been there for you, knowing that this is information I've got to get sussed out and make sure it's accurate, and make sure this is also something that you screw this reporting up too bad, your publication gets sued for defamation, libel, slander, these different things. It's a real, this is very consequential reporting that you're doing. New job, new place, new, like everything. You're still getting your feet wet.
And an issue that has such deep, like, people feel this very deeply because, like I said, this is inside of like a mountain with cultural significance that have been carved out. There's
so much history.
There's a lot of different people's history. The history of workers who died making it. History of indigenous people around it who have their own cultural history around it. That from their perspective is taken from them. The military families who are being affected. The top level, because there are strategic, like this was the strategic reserve. Like this was the strategic reserve to be used in like a major conflict. So like they're like within weeks, like I'm already like talking face to face with the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations in a press conference room and at the Pacific Fleet. And, we're all the local media just kind of sitting there grilling them and like asking for answers. And
those folks are high enough that they're probably trying to get answers themselves in the meantime.
Right. Well, they don't. Well, but they did not always have good answers. Like I can tell you the quote that lives in my mind and the one that I got out that a lot of people do remember from that. When I looked across the table at Secretary Del Toro and I asked him, look, with all these things that, and the stakes so high, we're talking a lot about readiness and we're talking about like, again, at this point, they were still kind of fighting back on the idea that they would have to close Red Hill. They were like, kind of like, it's a really strategically important thing. There's a lot of things going on in the Pacific. This is the top priority theater. There's stuff with the PRC and, like we're concerned about all this stuff and we just really need to keep going and we need to keep these operations going. Cause we also had like constant movements of ships. So like from their perspective, like this is like, we can't have this right now. But I asked him like, if the fuel that we're relying on to keep the ships and planes moving is also making the people who use these platforms sick, their families sick, isn't that a readiness issue too? And what he said to me is, it's not the fuel that's making them sick, it's the fuel in the water. So we need to figure out how the fuel got in the water and do something about it.
Well, I mean, touche, sir. Yeah, it's the fuel in the water. We agree on that.
Right. Well, we did. And I should have asked new in the position. My follow-up position is, well, isn't it?
So we agree that it is a problem.
Well, we don't. But the thing is, we don't like at that point they were saying we don't know. Well, at that point they were saying they don't know for sure that it was Red Hill. Though actually, with the stuff we know, I think probably they should have known. But like the follow-up question should have been, what's the most likely source of fuel, sir? Like what around where, given where that is. And by the way, I hadn't been in there yet. Even like I knew that stuff was close together. This was before I went into the facility itself when they had Navy divers going into the contaminated well to do to take samples and try to put things in there to kind of like these kind of sponges to try to absorb stuff. So I went in there while they were doing that, and that was when I realized how close the spill was to the well. Like when I say that they are right next to each other, I mean hallway and walking down a fuel that like in the words of Ron Burgundy smells like pure gasoline, and then walking down that hallway and then that's the well. Like we didn't like it wasn't a long trip down that tunnel. Yeah. It was a straight shot down the tunnel. There's the well.
I'm going to put this on my running list I have in my head. There's this whole conversation right now. This is a huge hard right, hard left turn tangent here, but we're recording this on, this episode won't come out until next week, but we're recording this on Veterans Day.
Right.
And the, a thing that I've been seeing crop up I'm not a conspiracy guy, but when you have a major op-ed come out in the Washington Post and then a reported piece and you've got social media influencers all talking about, and then it's a part of the Project 2025 and everything about veterans disability payments and things like that. And I've been scouring these comment sections of these things, right? And everybody's like, yeah, it's, I mean, I totally get it if you're like a combat veteran and you've like got injured in war or whatever, but like everybody else. And it's like, no, man, there's a 1,000 other things that can screw you up in war or not.
Oh, yeah.
Being a Navy diver diving in gasoline water.
Yeah.
Like that's like another good example of things.
Right. And
that might screw you up.
And I talked to the guys, and one of the guys after he got out, and his wife ended up, was one of the people who was hospitalized. Chief Simic, one of the guys I talked to, and yeah, like 20 years doing Navy diver stuff, and he is pretty certain that like he's got dry eyes and like lots of things, and he feels it's pretty certain that it was exposure through that, and he's said that he wants to make sure that anybody who worked that detail, the VA really needs to take a special interest in them. Because they're
going to have things that, again, this isn't a thing that gets studied.
And the question also, like, you know, he did 20 years, so he's one of the older guys, but some of the younger guys, maybe their symptoms haven't manifested yet. Because that's the other thing. Like, some people got sick immediately. Some people who were exposed of years later kind of said, like, I don't know, like I'm starting to get bothered by this, and if you remind them, like, well, were you drinking the water then? And you know, but again, that challenge is because there hasn't been a lot of research on this, and it's real hard.
I mean, it's fair to say for these Navy divers that were diving into this jet fuel water, they were also drinking and bathing in it at home because they presumably were living within the footprint.
By then they were probably using water bottles. Most people stopped using that water by that point.
Fair enough.
To that
point, though,
I mean, to give you a scale of like how big of a deal this was, people got shuttled, and this was still kind of like late term pandemic, so there was, luckily, I guess, like some vacancies in Waikiki at some of these hotels, so people got moved out of their homes for part of this. Army, Navy, Air Force started going about getting people out of their homes, and like the Army, I think, was the most proactive in telling people, like, don't drink it, don't use it to bathe, like anything that, like, you know, I was at a town hall when they were asking, like, well, my air conditioner uses the water, and they were like, well, I would advise you until we know more to like not use it. Or like, fine, if you got family, like, you know, this, like, it's not the ideal thing to say, but like, we don't know yet. Yeah, we don't know. So like, don't. Yeah. And it was really interesting to see the way that the Army and the Navy, like, they had completely different comm strategies, particularly in the early time, and that caused a lot of friction between the two. And I've heard some stories about what the conversation looked like between closed doors, about like generals and admirals screaming at each other.
Yeah, you report in this space long enough, and you find out that there is very much a big difference in the sort of PR public, public facing comms, the strategy behind that between the different branches, and even within the branches, and between the different PAO shops and at what levels and things like that. It is not as unified of a front as you might think it is coming out of the military.
So to give you an idea, though, like of what it was like, there was one day in particular, there was a digital town hall of a lot of the Army leadership on island talking about, you know, what they know and what they don't know, and a lot of it was them saying very honestly, we don't really know. Now, granted, they didn't spill the fuel, but like AMR and Red Hill were Army housing areas that were on the Navy waterline. So they were in, and they had to respond because they're people who they were responsible in there, whether they were, regardless of what branch they were in, were using Army housing. And yeah, they said, like, we don't know how far the contamination has gone. But one of the big things that Major General Ryan, who was at the time the commanding general of the 25th Infantry Division, said was like, look, I'd like to tell you that I think you guys can all get back home by Christmas. I can't make that promise. Like, I just don't see this.
And that candor's got to be appreciated, at least, even if it's not welcome, it's appreciated. I'm sure.
So this is a digital town hall in the morning. That afternoon, the Navy addresses the state legislature, and Admiral Vanderlei, head of Navy Facilities Pacific, said, "It is my commitment to you that this will be fixed by Christmas." And I wasn't watching that because I was writing up kind of what the Army had said, because we were, you know, our team was kind of spreading out.
Yeah.
And I saw on Slack that he's saying it's going to be done. And I heard that. I'm like, no way. You misunderstood what he said. Because, like, maybe you don't speak mill speak, you know, because like a lot of times it's my job to translate. Yeah. Because there's a lot of misunderstanding. So like, I've covered the military long enough. So I went and looked at the remarks because because I heard General Ryan say earlier today, like, they wouldn't be this far apart. And then I went and heard him, like, oh, wow. Yeah, he did say that. So like, AM, not like this won't be solved by Christmas. PM. This will be solved by Christmas. And the story that I wrote was these people are saying completely different things. And so, like, if you're confused, we're confused.
Yeah.
You know?
And those stories got sent around, and
yes. I mean,
speaking of things to FOIA, that would be an interesting thing. Is those email?
Oh, their internals. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'd love to know.
Yeah, just out of curiosity. So going into the Pentagon did order a permanent shutdown and defueling of Red Hill in spring 2022. My notes here March 7th, but does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that's when they agreed that they would do it.
Yes.
But obviously this long process, an ongoing process.
You don't it's not a switch that you flip off.
No.
But that's when they said we are going to.
No, though that is, I think, one of the challenges, because the state of Hawaii had given them an emergency order that they kept resisting and fighting in court that was asking them to drain the tanks within a month. As we would learn,
would you say 250 million gallons of fuel?
Well, that's its capacity. That's not how much was actually, but how much was in there at any given time was classified. So
Makes sense.
Up until the point where they actually were draining it, we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So we would just say that we know that it has this capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how much is in here?
Yeah.
Like, it was always the question, like, how much fuel do you have in there?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, like, in terms of what they had to do is they had to set up a interagency multi-service task force, pulling off a 2-star admiral who was promoted to 3-star, and it was his job. Mm-hmm. Admiral John Wade, who now is commander at 3rd Fleet over in San Diego, but they tapped him. He was the ops officer at Indo-Pacific Command, and they pulled him away from that to give you an idea of how serious this was and how much work it was going to actually be. And one of the things that he said is, this is the only billet I've ever been assigned that doesn't have an end date. Because I don't.
Sir, were you a part of the War on Terror?
Well, no. Well, but he would transfer.
Yeah.
I mean, I know what you mean there, but but the idea that
that's just I can't help but be sarcastic about that stuff.
Right. But like his mandate, his job was to defuel the tanks, and if it takes 5 years, that's how long you're going to be here.
Yeah.
Like if it take whatever long it takes, like that's how long you're here. Mm-hmm. But the reason why they had to do this, they needed to get all these engineers together, because what we kind of learned, and what had already been kind of known, and as things were being released to the states, like during these hearings leading up to that, is the pipelines had not been taken care of to the degree that people had been told, and a lot of things there had not been taken care of to the degree
that affects your ability to
right. Like if you're going to, because if we need to get this stuff out so that we don't have more leaks, you can't then move it all out through these corroded pipes.
And now you've got ground contamination.
Yeah, which also and
this is such a multi-pronged thing, because it's not just the pipes, but now you're also talking about what kind of where are you moving it to?
Right. So and which also, like, a question that nobody's ever really answered me, like, if this facility was so critical and it was our strategic reserve, if the PLA had crossed the Taiwan Strait and we were going to rely on this, what were you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of strategic readiness,
I mean, this is an ongoing problem of for a long time, the military has privileged, and, for reasons that I think are not that hard to understand, but like all the branches, you see combat arms people at the top. Whereas there was a time where you would see more engineers and like logisticians around there. It wouldn't be all them. It would be a mixture, but like it's been really taken over by combat arms people, which, because these people are impressive and they've done impressive things. They got their CIB and their Purple Hearts and their medals, but
the jungle warfare tab.
Yeah, but it is one of those things that over the last couple of years has been like, let's invest in weapons and engineers, those guys, what? Oh, you want to fix this? Like, we got to get out there and we need more bullets. We don't need more pipelines. I don't want to hear about that. And there's been a culture, I think, within the Department of Defense or Department of War, whatever we want to go with today, but that has been going on for a while, and we have kind of let a lot of infrastructure stuff just kind of go. And Red Hill, I think, was indicative. But I mean, what we also learned, there was an IG report that found that across the board on fueling facilities, Red Hill had the highest stakes because of where it's located. But like things like this have been happening around the fuel facilities. There have been problems. Not that there weren't people who were trying to fix them, but like this has been an ongoing dirty secret among this community, the people who work on these things. So this task force, their job was to make this facility safe enough to get the fuel out. So like going through the pipes, going through everything like inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter, looking like what's corroded, what's not, what needs to be fixed here, what needs to be tightened down. Like, and they found out that some of the stuff was so old they couldn't get replacement parts that they needed to order because they didn't exist anymore. Like they had to build entirely new. And it was a lot of work. And by the way, I give the task force that did this a lot of credit. And I give Admiral Wade a lot of credit. You know, a very hard job with a lot of eyes on them at any given point. This was such hard work for all of them. You know, I can praise them but also point out that like the work that they had to do was necessary because of a wider culture of neglect that had been allowed to pervade for decades.
This is happening around the same time that reporting was coming out around rusting ships and like neglect across the Navy.
Right.
Is what it seemed. Not literally the entire Navy, but problems like this, maintenance issues or neglect issues.
Well, that
cropping up in different parts of the Navy.
I wouldn't call the rust neglect necessarily, but that is like an issue of like that lack of back end infrastructure. Maybe there.
I mean, as a leader in the military, you are responsible for men, weapon, and equipment. Equipment is in the maintenance of,
right.
You know.
Well, no, and that's and the reason why things also were rusty was because the high operation tempo. Like especially if you look at like the Pacific Fleet, and like it reached ahead even like I believe it was 2017 when we started having those accidents because people weren't sleeping and like people who were out on deployment, like.
I also think that that's a failure of leadership. Like I've been in high op tempo units before,
of course,
and you still, again, as a leader, you have to prioritize the mission, and with that is people that can perform the mission. And so a sleep plan and things like that. I mean, that is like, speaking from an Army point of view, you know, which is a very different world than the Navy. But from an Army point of view, even like in a patrol base, you're setting up sleep plans and things like that because you don't want the guy that's falling asleep on his gun providing security.
Well, no, but and it is one of these things where I think two things happen at once, you know. And I think this is kind of related actually to you know, GWAT in a certain sort of way, in a way that we wouldn't necessarily think.
A better analogy is we always make sure our pilots have enough sleep, right?
Right. Well, no, but what I was going to say about like the Navy situation is all this operational stuff at sea, a lot of it was really in the shadow of all of our attention that was in the desert, you know, and the Navy got really, they had a lot of, they've never not had a lot of demands on them, patrolling sea lanes constantly, presence patrols. Like they were always doing this.
People don't realize how critical the United States Navy is to like the world order.
But as a culture thing though, I think what that also meant is that the Navy really, a lot of these people, even like pretty smart people, like had very little experience dealing with the media and very little experience being scrutinized because they were doing things that people weren't really watching,
interested in,
because we were all, you know, like because you know it's danger, like it's high stakes what they do, but like the coffins were coming back from. The coffins were coming back from Iraq. They were coming back from Afghanistan. They were not coming back from the South China Sea. So people weren't really watching that. And it became easy to just kind of take for granted that was going there. But yeah, like, but also that gets to that whole thing about that rust, like these ships being driven so hard all the time. But that also means that the people who are the mechanics that are working on them, the people that are operating them, if you're driving your your ship's hard and your plane's hard, that means you're driving the people that are using them real hard too, and that's going to follow up. I mean, we've seen the reporting, I think, on suicides in shipyards about how miserable the work conditions are in there, particularly if you get somebody like straight out of basic and their first assignment, because they were told they're going to see the world, and actually what they end up seeing is Newport News Port with sparks flying over your bunk, living in an aircraft carrier and never getting to go home because there's so much work to be done around there. But like Red Hill, I think was really, for me, like, I think a really symbolic, like literally the floodgates opened, and we just see how, but
canary in the coal mine for the rest of the military on Readiness,
but also stunningly, it never really got that national attention that I would have expected.
This is why you're here right now is because I think this is a story that should be, again, people should be aware that it happened, is going on. That's kind of my next question here, is like, what's gone right since then and what's not gone right? Like what's been slowing things down. Right. But the, what's kind of concerning is, yes, it affected people in that area. It affected Hawaii. It affected strategic readiness potentially in that area. As we have, rising and falling tensions with China depending on the day or the week. But it's also, you know, like I said, this is around the same time that we see rust on ships, that we see, we're still running off of floppy disks in our ICBM silos, where, you know, we're talking about the many aspects of the military that are maybe not as up to date as what, you know, we're cutting edge with night vision devices and fifth generation strike fighters. There's a lot of other places that have been neglected. And as we saw, you know, again, I'm sorry to take this into like wildly different directions, but no problem. What did we just see in Ukraine with what was supposed to be one of the world's best and largest militaries in Russia? They got stopped almost in their tracks in their invasion in 2022 because of their, you know, all the tanks were rusting out, and all the men, weapon, equipment that they have were not quite what was being briefed, right? And you almost wonder, is that also happening in the U.S.? And now I don't think it's to the degree that, because I don't think there's corruption everywhere. The United States military is no exception. There's corruption that happens.
Yeah, is
it to the degree that the Russian military has? No, I'm not trying to draw that comparison there, but if this is happening in Hawaii with the Navy and the water supply, if there's other problem areas that are popping up, we know the state of the barracks is just absolute horseshit across the military. There's different things that I think that as American citizens, as taxpayers, as people that are like kind of depending on the military, and I say this as like a guy who was supposed to toe that line for a while there, like, hey, what are we doing here? And this is really, again, I put this on leadership, because this isn't your E2 seaman out there making these decisions.
No, absolutely not. Like these are definitely much bigger institutional questions,
and not just military leadership. This goes as high as Congress and other places.
That is one of the big things about this, because you have to remember that, like, there was somebody found like an old, you know, it was from one of our, Star-Advertiser is a merged paper of the history of the Star Bulletin and the Honolulu Advertiser, but I think it was an old article from like 1971 about the late Senator Daniel Inouye asking the Navy about a leak from the facility then.
What year was that?
Like 1970 something. So like that. So like to you can't stress enough that this is like a long institutional problem. This isn't like, if anybody in either party or in any administration wants to point fingers, like this isn't a
everybody owns a little bit of this.
This isn't a you did this. This is a we, the federal government of the United States. We did this. Yep. We should have been way more on top of this, because this goes back.
And you've got to, you know, if you're a resident of Hawaii, you're kind of maybe asking your elected representatives, like, hey, if this has been happening for 50 years, like, or concerns, you know?
I don't, like, I think our water more or less, like, island wide is fine, though some of that had to have gotten into the aquifer. Like, I just think it had to have. And also there's stuff that might be in the soil that isn't there yet. We don't know. There's more studies. The Honolulu Board of Water Supply just filed a lawsuit for I think it was something like 1.9 billion. We can fact check that later. But it's in the billion like neighborhood. Like to give you actually even some perspective on this. I remember a Taiwanese military attaché who was at the consulate there, or sorry, they don't have a consulate. They have the Taipei Economic and Cultural Center.
Yeah.
On the island, but
something that a place that's not a real country would have.
Right. But anyway, a Taiwanese military officer who was living in Hawaii at the time asked me, "Are you drinking the water?" Because he's read all my stuff and like he follows military news out there, obviously. And he asked me I want to know like upfront like your perspective because like I live here with my family and we're like do you think the tap water is okay? And I told him, yeah, where you live, where we live, I think yes, I think it's probably okay. But like, yeah, they're thinking about it. I mean, I was told by Japanese diplomats that like they watch this stuff very closely because the U.S. military has fuel in their country.
Yeah.
So like, they're people who they're invested in the alliance, but like everybody at the Japanese consulate knows my name because they read the paper and they go over the stuff that we're writing about, like me especially. Our tourism reporter and me are the two that they kind of read the most for like reasons that I think are probably easy to understand. But like I know that like our reporting has gone back to Japan and reports that they like they've cited my reporting and their reports back to their government on advice on how they should deal with the American government. The fuel has we know some of the locations that it's been sent. Some of it has gone to Subic Bay. People noticed when that was there and they had questions like, okay, so what are you going to do with it now that it's here? Like, what's the plan, guys? As we start like pushing it out to other people's countries, like allies, like some of these people have questions,
Yeah. I mean, understandably so, because if it's happening there, it would stand to reason that it could be happening in Japan and anywhere else that the U.S. is.
Or if not happening, could happen. Like like, and like there's a brand new they broke ground on a new fuel facility in Papua New Guinea.
The U.S. has?
Yes. Okay. Just this year. I forget what the capacity is, but it's a few hundred million gallons. And it's going to be at Port Moresby. So yeah, like this is an issue that people are going to watch pretty closely going forward.
Yeah. So what is since March 2022, what has sort of happened as far as fixing this problem? I mean, you talked a little bit about the task force that was brought together. Is there any like metrics that you can share that indicate progress on this?
Well, the fuel's out. They did like I said, Admiral Wade didn't get to leave his job until he got the fuel out of the tanks. Okay. He's leading Third Fleet at San Diego now, so they were able to successfully do that. They got it onto these tankers and got them reloaded. Yeah, sent to Singapore, to Subic, some to San Diego, some moved to another location on Hawaii on the west side around Kapolei. Private facility is going to be hosting some of that now. So yeah, like fuel has been relocated, but that leads to new questions about like the management of that fuel. They're in the last I talked to the decommission, because the defueling task force was stood down and now they have a closure task force for the facility. And their job is to kind of dismantle and try to clean up as much of this stuff as they can, like remediation and like sundowning this facility. And like they've committed to dismantling the tanks, because there was some concern that like, what if a new this happened under the Biden administration, but like questions of like, what if a new administration comes in and they decide to just reopen it? But institutionally, they've made a commitment like we're going to dismantle the pipes. Congress, and I mean, Congress has already told them that. Like, the rules are like, you're going to decommission the pipe. You're not going back in there. Like, it's by law. Like, it's done. Last I talked, they were trying to get this kind of residual sludge out of the tanks or out of the pipes. But, I think people did a good job of defueling. But one of the things that troubled me was an EPA guy I talked to, because, they're on site too. He said that there's still nooks and crannies of that facility that they don't know about because the engineering was never up to date. Like, the schematics were never up to date. And this came out, and this was mentioned in one of the IG reports that came out kind of near the end of last year. They said that when investigators asked to see the engineering library, they were directed to this room with all books and things strewn around and asked is there do you know where this is? And people were like, no, it's not my job. A lot of that, a lot of people telling me that's not my job. That's not my problem. That's your problem. But yeah, and they said straight up, we do not have full schematics of this facility. There's not there are incomplete even schematics from 1943 to now. We don't know what all this thing looks like.
This was strategic reserves. Guess what? Chinese can't steal the schematics if they don't exist.
Yeah, that's
Chestnut
an argument to be
checkers,
made.
Kevin.
Right.
Well, so the Hawaii Department of Health says that monitoring wells beneath the tanks still show intermittent elevated fuel contaminants. So even as the levels are trending down in most wells, how are residents feeling about all of this?
There's you're going to have a lot of different answers on that depending on who you're talking to. This definitely has been. There's no way around it. Massive black eye for the military and the islands as a whole.
Has the military, has you say black eye reputational damage among the residents there?
Oh yeah. It's always been there's always a complicated relationship out there. Because the military, occupies so much of the land, and depending on who you talk to, the entire place is occupied land as a result of that. Because you have. I'm not going to take a position on this because I talk to people on all sides of the issue, but the question itself of whether Hawaii is legally a U.S. state or whether we should think of it as an illegally occupied colony. There are enough people in Hawaii who believe that I'm not going to call that a fringe view.
Yeah.
Enough people believe that there'll be people in DC who might hear that and be like, don't talk about that. That's a fringe view. It's not. I'm not going to go all the way to say that it's the mainstream view out there. You have a lot of different levels.
Enough people though. It's no different than I don't want to say it's no different, but it's not the only state where it has residents that feel like they're an exception. You look at, there's a large part of Idaho residents that are, being from the Pacific Northwest, you kind of know about that. Texas, obviously, a lot of people still very loudly like to proclaim that they're there by choice, not by
right. Well, but this is the only state that ever had a monarch that ruled it and was overthrown and then was annexed by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So
like I said, not the same, but it's not, but it's not, I guess it's not fringe in the aspect of you've got residents who don't feel like everything is on the up and up as far as statehood is concerned.
There are Native Hawaiians who will tell you I am not an American. We were never Americans, and we are not Americans, never will be. Now, of course, there are lots of Native Hawaiians who are very I am Hawaiian and I am American, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to give you numbers because I don't know if anybody's ever broken that down, and you're not going to get accurate numbers. But you need to people need to know that these are viewpoints that coexist and are happening at the same time. But whether you're a hardcore sovereigntist or you feel yourself a patriotic American, you're still not happy with how this has been handled by and large. A lot of veterans deeply disappointed in people who are currently serving, even who believe in what they're doing. You
said one of those Navy divers, his wife had to go
definitely. But also even people who are it's usually not part of the story, but public affairs officers have told me my family drank that water.
Mhm.
You know, like
Yeah.
no, I know a guy. I won't give his name because like
Yeah,
obviously
certainly.
this is like, but like when later even like in court, you know, they said like no way to link this, and you know, like his daughter, I think like celiac or something, but like something where like they had to regularly get like gastro scans for her for like what it looks like
Yeah.
inside there, and when she got sick, like they could see when like she had been drinking that water.
Mhm.
Now, the good news for her is she seems to have recovered. Like the scans are normal again.
Mhm.
But like when I hear stuff like that and they say like there's no way to definitively link this, like well, come on, man. And
Yeah.
like it's wild stuff on that. But yeah, but this affects also the wider military because right now the Army is in the process of negotiating for leased lands. A lot of the land that they've used for training out there is land that they leased from the states in the 1960s for $1. And those leases expire in 2028. And when they say that, you know, we'll handle it responsibly and we'll be good neighbors, they're doing that on the heels of all of this having happened.
Not exactly the strongest negotiating position.
And also like their own history in some of these places, like the Makua Valley is an example of a place where the Army trained. There's no live fire training out there anymore because of lawsuits and lots of reasons. But the Makua Valley, Makua in Hawaiian means parent. And it is, according to oral tradition, basically the Garden of Eden for like the Hawaiian oral tradition among a lot of Hawaiians, where the Sky Mother and Earth Father came together, or I might have those genders reversed. Forgive me if I did. Yeah. For anybody from the islands watching me here, thinking about that a lot on who might see this. But yeah, like the Army occupied that land and did live fire on it and dropped napalm and machine gunned it up and did all of that.
And for Joe Snuffy out there,
and also like for years, and part of the why they don't do this anymore out there. For years they said that there were no native Hawaiian like cultural sites out there. There was no historic sites. Well, a wildfire started and burned up a lot of the brush. And what did that reveal? A bunch of new cultural sites that they didn't know about. Really? Some old stuff.
Just something like the jungle had overgrown.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So and that was kind of a problem for them when they said there's nothing out there, and then suddenly there's a lot of stuff up there. I mean, you know, it's worn down, it's stone, but like when you go there, you can. And I've seen these sites like, oh yeah, people lived here, and like big communities lived here.
This is maybe a random trivia for you, but maybe you might know. But how long do they say that the Hawaiian Islands have been inhabited by humans? Do you know?
Hundreds, if not a few thousand. That's part of a wider story of the settling of Polynesia, coming on canoes from Asia, circumventing. But I mean that in and of itself is something we could talk about for hours. I'd defer to somebody who's a better expert on Polynesian migration.
My point though is that people didn't just show up here yesterday.
Oh no,
these are islands, big islands, yes, but islands. There's only so many places to go as a species. To me, it's just common sense that most of the islands have history from some point or another. Oh,
and as we get into bigger Pacific issues here, I mean, something that I need people to know in general is, I think a big problem that we have in not just America, I think most people around the world who don't live in the Pacific. You remember the globe you saw as a kid, and like the Pacific was this big empty place, like just big body of water, but it is dotted with a lot of little rocks. I mean, islands, but like most of them, have had human habitation at some point in the history of migration of Polynesians, Melanesians, and Micronesians coming by canoe, navigating the waters. I mean, one of the expressions that we actually kind of have out there is, Westerners, writ large, whatever we want to call it, like look at the Pacific Ocean as this vast, intimidating expanse, and they view oceans as a thing that separate us. But it's kind of said out there that the ocean is actually what connects us, because like it's hard to cross a mountain. It's easier to sail or to take a river. Like traveling by water until we built the railroad Like water was how you got places.
Yep.
And honestly, if we look at how the global economy works, it still
Where
is.
most of the population is. Yeah, it's along rivers and shores.
And it's how goods move. Like well, we a lot of us move. We are now used to flying by plane, but most of your stuff didn't get here on a plane. It got here on a boat.
I think a lot of Americans became painfully aware of how much stuff came via water by Frygate during the sort of the after effects of the pandemic, or even during that with the shipping slowdowns and the port closures or port restrictions and things like that. It's like, oh yeah, everything travels by water over ships just about.
Right. And
part of the reason that the Somali pirate thing was such a huge deal when it was affecting shipping lanes, how much of global policy is affected by the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal?
You know, it's a joke about Americans don't touch their boats. Yeah, but like really,
my favorite memes on the internet are the "Don't touch my boat" memes.
But like really, I mean, if you don't know, like really that when you touch the boats, that's when everybody starts noticing you. Like if you're a group that is messing with the boats, messing with international shipping, that's not a little thing. And sometimes people are dismissive about, but they don't like the economics of like the international, like who works on boats, like all the Filipino laborers, all the different like international players involved. And, you know, like it is a large, complicated world. And we all have stakes in it. Whether you'd like to or not, or whether you think you do or not. There's a term that I was exposed to a few years ago, like that strategists who work on maritime issues like to talk about, and they call it sea blindness, which is because it's going on out there. Like even like people in Washington who should know better, it's just not in their brain because they don't see it. Like, okay, yeah, shipping, it's important, but like if you don't see it, it's kind of not there, and you just take for granted that all that stuff, whatever, like you can hear it, but it's not really real to you. Like you understand intellectually that that's a real thing. I mean, it might
as well be space travel, though. Yeah, as far as I understand that astronauts go up to the International Space Station or we're on the moon. I have no idea about the in between A and B there.
No, I mean it's a lot easier if you're somebody who like lives within eyesight of a port. You know, like when I lived in Tacoma, Washington, like I had a place that I lived in for a bit where right outside my living room was a view down at the port.
Yep.
Boats coming in and out.
Eyesight here.
I had a couple friends who were longshoremen working down at the docks. Well, I mean, this is also like an ongoing joke. If anybody here is a fan of The Wire, everybody always says season 2 is the lamest season. It has nothing to do with anything because it's like, what does shipping have to do with this? I'm like, you should really, if you ever felt that way and you watch The Wire, I would say rewatch season 2 and like really watch it, really listen. It matters a lot.
I think I am one of those people that needs to go revisit that season. Yeah, I need to revisit that. Well,
boats, man.
Thinking back on all the reporting that you've done on Red Hill now, are there any sort of big takeaways on accountability that you're left with?
Yeah, we know that right now there was recently federal charges leveled against 2 Navy civilian employees. We'll see if more happen. But yeah, this was an issue where I think a lot of people did not take accountability properly. A lot of people who are really high up. And yeah, like this goes, like I've seen some people who have framed this as like it was never really national, but a few of the people who watched it described this as a Biden era problem. But like, as we talked about with the history, I'm like, that's just not true. And it happened a year into the Biden administration, which, not to give them any like,
they share in it. They're just not the sole.
And so I'll give you an example right here. We local media out there, we never once got to talk to Lloyd Austin about this. Never once. He flew into Hawaii a few times, but like we never got to ask a question. We never got to.
The Pentagon press corps was not bringing this up in.
Not usually. No, I don't. They did. Some of them did.
Maybe at the height, right around that early November.
So, well, no, and some afterwards. Like,
I don't want to get an angry call from Jeff Schogel about.
Well, no. So Jeff did actually.
Yeah.
Like, but also like what's notable here is the people who were doing it were people like, Military Times, Task and Purpose, like the military press. No, like I would say that this issue has been well covered.
Haley wasn't at CNN yet.
She was not, but no, and she did great work. A lot of people did. But yeah, like and I will actually say that like Washington Post actually did do a pretty good story, but never got to do the follow-ups. And I'm blanking on his name right now. Really, really good reporter.
Dan Lamoth?
No, Alex. Horton? Alex Horton? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've talked to him more than once. I feel really bad. But anyway, Alex did that. And I talked to him even a few times and I'm like, and sent him things like, cause he had done that story, but it's one of those things where like, all the way out on this side of the country and some of the editors at some of these other things, like they don't see it. And also like more than that, like making the pitch, like, hey, we got to go back there and do some reporting on the ground. And their reaction, with budgets being there, like in Hawaii, you think we're going to send you to Hawaii?
Yeah.
No way, man.
Every reporter ever that's like, I need to go to one of these, like you're just trying to get a vacation on the company dime.
And I won't, and I probably shouldn't use names of other reporters, but like, yeah, but I've talked to more than one person who said like, Red Hill is one of the biggest stories we're not covering right now because I can't get my editors to. And
that's a real thing with news editors. There are some blind spots on that. I think one of the most, I think I've talked about it before on this show, but huge blind spot going into the Afghan withdrawal of the way up until
it happened. Yeah.
It was in progress and you couldn't, they still were like, people don't care about Afghanistan. It really wasn't until the videos of like civilians falling off aircraft that everybody else started to really pay attention. But before that, it was like as Afghanistan, like as retrograde was happening, as the Taliban were sweeping across Afghanistan, you still couldn't get editors to say, hey, Afghanistan is something people want to read about, or like it's a real blind spot on certain things. And there's other examples of this too, that as a journalism industry, there's certain blind spots that we have. And, one in Hawaii totally makes sense, not just because it's so far removed from everything else. Certainly the major national publications that all tend to be in the mid-Atlantic or Northeast United States. Also the fact that a reporter can't, with a straight face, go to their editor and be like, hey, send me to Hawaii, Reporters have, but it's a hard sell,
right?
It's
absolutely.
A hard sell. I don't know. And I don't know how to correct that because ultimately that's just a human problem. It's just a human thing that you navigate like any other profession has to.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, I think that to go on a tangent about like the health of the journalism industry, this would be helped if we could get bigger, healthier regional outlets to be functional again like they used to, because too much of everything is concentrated on this side of the country, like New York, DC headquarters. But like there was a time when even like the Baltimore Sun used to be part of a company that had bureaus overseas. They had people in London at one point. The Seattle Times used to have stuff like that.
San Diego Tribune, LA Times certainly. They're all
when I was growing up, like in the early days of the Iraq War, the Oregonians sent their people to embed with the Oregon National Guard. We had these healthier newsrooms that could pick up these things, and through wire services, people would get these things. The Star-Advertiser itself used to be much larger. I don't want to sit here and complain too much in this setting about the staffing problems we have. Full disclosure, I'm the union leader for the newsroom.
A little bit of a conflict of interest there.
Well, no, I will talk about that and have in other settings. I'm perfectly happy to complain about corporate decisions, but we'll say right now in the context of this and how critical of an institution it is, how thankful I am to have the opportunity to work there, and that they still see that like military reporting needs to be done in a place with so much military, because there used to be military reporters and dotted throughout the country covering the bases that were next to them. Like the Tacoma News Tribune, which used to have Adam Ashton there, who was a phenomenal reporter. He's now deputy editor at Cal Matters, big deal nonprofit newsroom doing really important stuff. But he was never really properly replaced. I had a Report for America colleague when I went to Civil Beat. There were 3 of us that were covering military, one in Tacoma, one in Hawaii. I actually was trying to get the Tacoma one, but they sent me to
a
Hawaii.
little closer to home.
Well, and also I knew the area. I knew
more contacts right off the bat.
But I mean, twist my arm, And they had somebody down in Annapolis. I think it actually, if I think about it, all the places they sent people to do military reporting, none of those people have a military reporter now. After the Report for America Fellowship, none of them have that. So like the loss of that institutional knowledge outside of DC, like funneling everybody there because that's the only place where you can get the job to do it. And then, it creates, if you're one of the people doing it, you get to be part of a very supportive network of colleagues, and that's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, the reason I'm out here right now is because I was at a military reporters and editors conference on Friday down in DC. It felt amazing to be among those people and people who know my work, because I'm kind of their lifeline into what's going on in Hawaii. Like they kind of need me to kind of be to have eyes on things, and a lot of them know that there's stuff going on out there, in like Hawaii, because I don't think we've said it yet, but I think we need to stress this. That's where U.S. Indo-Pacific Command is headquartered. Hawaii is the nerve center for all U.S. military operations in the Indo-Pacific Command area, which is described by them as polar bears to penguins, Bollywood to Hollywood. It's such a huge expanse. So many people live there. So many things happen there. And so much of it is happening in Honolulu. So much of the diplomacy is happening in Honolulu, not just the military stuff. That's kind of your halfway point for flying somebody all the way out to like the Secretary of State all the way out to a meeting out there, like one of his people to go to Tokyo, or you could fly out some of them to Hawaii and some of us to Hawaii and have the meeting there. The State Department has an office at Camp Smith for things exactly like that.
Yeah. That makes sense. And that's another thing when you talk about like the globe and looking at a map, a lot of people don't realize actually how far Hawaii is into the Pacific.
But then how much farther all that other stuff is still.
Yeah. And it is, like you said, it's not an empty ocean, but man, it is a big ocean. You turn the globe just right and it's nothing but blue. I mean, it is a large ocean.
Well, it is, but I remember showing a friend of mine who had just gotten back. He'd been a photojournalist in Afghanistan. He asked me a question about the Pacific, and I showed him like this little map that was like facing the Pacific, because usually you do this thing, but
where
it
you
was
can see both.
It was just the Pacific with everything else in the periphery, and it was full of all these like little dots. And he's like, "Is that like pixelation?" I'm like, "No, those are all of the islands that we live in and where people live."
Yeah, Yep. And and there's deserted islands too. I mean, there are many land masses.
Well, there are some that don't have people living on them, but I can guarantee you that through the process of Polynesians moving around, they set foot on them.
Oh, for sure.
They may have decided because they probably decided not to live there because they couldn't, because there was no potable water, or it's like this is just not we can stop the canoe here and we can rest for a minute, but we're not staying here. There's nothing here for us.
Yeah, I mean, some of them just literally aren't big enough. They are small, postage stamp sized things,
atolls and reefs and all sorts of things out there.
Well, so I guess broadening our conversation out from Red Hill and specifically Hawaii, you've embedded with the Coast Guard.
I have.
And gone out on patrols in the Pacific fisheries. What surprises you the most about the day-to-day enforcement out there?
Well, one thing I think is really seeing up close how complicated that whole thing really is. Because I had been writing about how important it is, but I really just felt like I needed to see it to understand. Because there were things about it I didn't really get. Like what does it actually look like to like board a fishing vessel? What does it look like to what are these patrols actually look like, and how are we going to stop illegal fishing? And I gotta say, like I walked away like really impressed and having a great time. With
Coast Guard is really impressive,
they're cool.
right?
They're really impressive people, but I walked around away feeling a little bit grim about what we can do about this.
Yeah.
Because it is such a huge issue, and it with so many consequences, and in the mechanisms that we have to do something about it.
Well, for people that are unfamiliar,
we'll break it down.
Let's frame the problem here and why it's hard to solve.
Yeah. So that was what I was going to go into next. So like, it was in 2020 that the Coast Guard declared that illegal, unregulated fishing had outpaced piracy as the biggest threat to global maritime security. And honestly, if you look back, like that's because we mentioned Somali pirates earlier. Like this is actually a great example of kind of how of like consequences and what this can lead to. Because the original Somali pirates, before they started taking hostages, before they started like messing with the boats like that, when the government there collapsed, that also meant like that they didn't really have a Coast Guard anymore, and that there was no enforcement on those waters. So you had like kind of unscrupulous fishermen that from other countries deciding like, oh, like gold rush, like that is a rich fishery, and we can just go in and we can take. We can go in and we can take. So Somali fishermen, because everything is like broken down, like they go out there with guns and kind of tell them like, no, you can't. Yeah, But then like some of them started realizing that they could start getting ransoms, and they could make a lot more money doing that than they ever could doing fishing. But like that's part of the issue. Like if illegal fishing creates lawlessness within the waters, but also like the ecological damage. Like when you start taking too many fish, and
unregulated fishing. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand.
And for some people who hear that, it's just kind of like, ooh, hippies complaining. To put you into perspective, but what this actually means for these ecosystems. Because first of all, a lot of like these Somali fishermen and like Somali coastal communities, like fish are their source of protein, and for a lot of people, this is their livelihood. And up and down a lot of the world, like seafood, like a lot. So like in some places you may be thinking of seafood as a luxury. For some people, it's what comes right out of the water. It's what feeds them.
Yeah.
It's a really important thing. So if these ecosystems get depleted, that means fishermen can't work. Food security is threatened, but also fishermen who can't work, they still know how to do boats. They're real good at navigating boats, and they're good at navigating waters, and they will find ways to support their family. And that could be piracy, it could be drug running. And then when they start getting into these businesses, other people start getting involved, it creates the economic collapse, and then it lets criminal elements in. Like you had what was a legitimate economy that was based around there being a healthy ecosystem where people took what an ecosystem could allow them to take. But then when more and more is taken, and you take and take and take, like a great example here, like the South China Sea was once bountiful, and there's still a lot of fish in there, and there's still a lot of reefs, but it's considered collapsed. And I believe the number is that like it's at like 93% less than it used to be.
Wow.
Because of how much
it was just ravaged.
We collectively, until like during a lot of the 20th century, honestly, like until like everybody got greedy during the 20th century.
And the same could be said about land-based wildlife as well. Like this area where we're at in New Hampshire here, moose used to be everywhere.
Right.
But almost completely wiped out by the 1970s.
But like specifically, and we talked about like, because there was such a thought that like the ocean is so big. And there's so much
you possibly overfish it. Yeah.
And every fishery is under strain today. Like there isn't a single one that isn't because of that. And also like adding in like, the impacts of pollution that these ecosystems are already suffering that are threatening species. Like what was it? It was a few years ago, like a moment to me that really just like scared the crap out of me. So I'm, being from the Pacific Northwest, we see the impacts of like reef bleaching all the time where I live. But up in like around British Columbia, I was reading a story about all the mussels that were on the coast cooking to death in the water because it was too warm. Because these are cold water, like clams and stuff like that. These are cold water creatures. I mean, we're in New England. We know what we're talking about here. Like, these live in the cold water here. That's what makes these ecosystems thrive. They're in the cold. But yeah, like the water got too warm, and it was obviously they didn't go extinct, but it was a very mass die-off that summer, like huge amounts, more so than anybody had ever seen.
And like you say, it affects what those local fishermen are able to put. They can't support their families now, and
but they've got skills. You know, and,
like you said, they're going to pay the bills one way or the other.
So, so that sets the stage, kind of like for when we're looking at what we're looking at in the Pacific and Pacific Island countries in particular. Very like these are healthy fisheries really pay the bills for the entire country. Because most of the fishing isn't even like the commercial fishing isn't even done by them. It's by foreigners coming in, buying a permit. And so like the permit that they buy, like pumps money into their local economy, funds local services, funds the way that these countries have really functioned for a long time. It's not the only thing, but it is really one of the biggest things for a lot of these Pacific Island nations and communities. And beyond that, like whether it's even like healthy fisheries, but also like let's say you're a country like Palau, which is known for its healthy reefs, and like you're trying to attract tourists to come and see all this beautiful stuff, and then you show up and like, where are they? And now, luckily for them, it hasn't gotten that bad. Like, it's still bountiful reefs and healthy. But I don't know. We've been seeing that in Hawaii. Like, I remember snorkeling as a kid and everything I would see. And when I go out now, it's less. It's visibly less.
Like I said, you can point to other examples where we've overdone it. On different things. You can look at whales. You can look at lobster up here. You can certainly land-based things. And this is where, like, you said, like, a lot of people dismiss the concern over illegal commercial fishing as like hippie stuff. It's like, no, I don't think it is for the same exact reason why we have.
Not anymore. They don't. In national security studies, everybody, like Navy, like it's not just the Coast Guard saying this, the Navy is watching this. Like all the agencies and around the world, like different governments, like are like, this is a problem. And also like, and we can get into also like, there's also like issues around like stuff that look like fishing vessels that might not really be. That's another reason why the US government has gotten more interested in scrutinizing fishing fleets. China's specifically being the biggest one because they are the world's largest fishing fleet. They're state subsidized. And also, like we said earlier, like China has a lot of mouths to feed, and limited ways to do it. So fishing for a long time was really a critical source of protein for them. It still is, but their fishing effort has grown to the point where they're not just doing it to feed themselves. They're now at the point where they're catching people's fish and selling them back to them. While like taking, I won't say that every Chinese fisherman is outright breaking the law, but the Chinese fishing fleet specifically is one of the biggest. As a collective is a bigger problem than
I can put some numbers to this.
Sure.
There's about 3.3 billion people, so about half of the earth, just under half of the earth, relies on fish for some or all of their protein needs. And about 1 in 5 fish comes from illegal fishing activities.
Yes, absolutely.
So you frame it in those numbers. Those are massive numbers there. And the Pacific Ocean's a big place. The Atlantic Ocean's a big place. You can overfish those things.
You can. And it's, and it's delicate. Like you mess with one species, like because it's an ecosystem, all these things. I mean, that obviously people have fished for centuries. We've always fished, long history. But yeah, when you start, one of the Coast Guardsmen, I talked to said like, well, if you do this, let's say you get rid of one of these like important, and a lot of the ones that we eat, let's be clear, like tuna, one of the biggest ones, migratory, which means that they move around. So like when their numbers start dwindling, like it's not like a localized problem. These are migratory fish that go around the ocean, interact with these ecosystems. You start collapsing that, and that can have impacts on other creatures that might, and also like things that I'm not going to do well on the science here, but like other animals sometimes will like eat the droppings of other creatures. So, like they rely on their presence there. So like one thing has a problem, then this has another problem, and then like this can even
it
like
is an ecosystem.
And
There's
this can even start affecting the salinity in other places, like the chemistry of the water. If because you can get plankton bursts, like you can get like all these different things can happen when okay, so but like one thing things can collapse that you didn't even consider. Like one thing happens to one animal, and then you learn as a result of that, like, oh, we didn't know that this was really important for this other animal.
The
or
second
this
and third
thing.
order effects are substantial.
And we've seen stuff like that happen definitely around the ocean. But yeah, like this affects things on land. But like in terms of why this is so hard to get after, when I got out there and really looked at it and talked to them, like, like how does this work? Like, when you're boarding, what are you looking for? How do we do stuff about this? If you find cocaine, like you put the bracelets on, you slam the cocaine down there, you get the picture, and all that is dealt with. Fishing is done a little bit differently.
It just looks like a fishing trip with the boys if you post that picture.
No. So like the way that enforcement goes and what makes a lot of this difficult is, first of all, like we're also talking about like the open ocean, like who gets to police the open ocean, and it is through these regional fishery management organizations where you have member countries. Like the U.S. Coast Guard can pull up to a fishing boat in international waters and say like, hey, we're gonna board and see what you're doing. They are legally allowed to do that, but if they find stuff, what they have to do actually is they have to write it up. They're not actually allowed to like detain you on the spot or like seize anything really. There's a few things I think they can seize, but like, yeah, they find you with an illegal drift net or something like this. What they do is they have to take the report and then they send it to the regional fishery agency. And a lot of times the person who's actually supposed to administer the punishment is the government of the flag state, whoever the vessel is flagged to. Which, by the way, to explain how flagging works, like every ship has a country that it is registered in, which is not necessarily who the crew is or who the owner is or who insured it, which is a great thing in international shipping, where if an accident happens, it's another situation where everybody's like, your fault. Because
I'm starting to understand how human trafficking is able to be proliferated via shipping vessels.
Oh, absolutely.
What you described there, that situation.
Yeah, you'll have a crew that's full of Indonesians. You'll have a Chinese captain and like an Albanian deputy. Yeah, and your ship is registered to Vanuatu or Panama. Yeah. Then they'll tell the Panamanian government, hey, this boat isn't following the rules. Slap them with a fine, or like, if it's all the way serious, like, arrest. But like, also like if they're all the way out there, that could be hard. Cause some of these ships don't go back to to their home country often, if ever. But also, and this is one of the challenges with China is, like we found a Chinese vessel, illegally fishing here, and you send.
It's like, okay, America.
The Chinese government, I'm sure, just has a stack of complaints. Yeah, of like, we found them doing this, and because you have to send it back to the flag state, and the flag state will either take action but like the region, like if it's bad enough, it can be like they can have their like license to. Like they can be decertified as being allowed to fish, because like the fishery agent, like the regional fishery agencies have like a registration. Like you can look up an individual one and you can see a picture of it. And they do have like tagged like IUU vessels like that are said like this thing, like these are criminals. These guys are criminals. Like if they arrive in your port, you are to seize the ship. Like they're not allowed to be here. However, like it's real hard to get on that list. You have to be really, really bad to get on that list. But like to add to that, like some context on that, at the time that I think I wrote the article for the entire like Southern Pacific, the area that I was at, there were 4 on the list of the like, but also like to add to why this also gets hard to even if you've got that, some of these ports, it's really easy to bribe somebody. But the other thing you can do is, okay, like this ship with this name, sell it, reflag it, keep the same, but keep all the same things.
Crew
like,
and everybody,
or reflag it, you know, like you can do a paper shuffle and then like they disappear off the list, but like nothing changes.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And that's, I mean, we talked a little bit about like the challenges of enforcement there.
Yeah.
But when you think about sort of like bilateral patrols and, you know, where you've got multiple jurisdictions that are trying to patrol or police the same section of ocean, you know, how does that work? I mean, what works and what doesn't, I guess.
Right. So, and also I want to revisit also what you mentioned human trafficking, because that's a big thing in all of this too. So I was on the Coast Guard cutter Harriet Lane. It was a medium endurance cutter. Well, when I say is older ship, 270 feet. They call them 270s. In the way that we did it, I met up with them in American Samoa, and rode with them to Apia, Samoa, independent state of Samoa, and then to Fiji. The way that it works and the way that the U.S. kind of does this is, you know, we have the ability to, you know, do these searches on the high seas. In these Pacific Island countries, usually you need to have local law enforcement on board with you. So what they do is they have shipwriter agreements, and they'll put on like a guy from their fishery agency or a police or a cop or like a few people on the boat. And that essentially deputizes the U.S. Coast Guard vessel to be working under their flag and also their entire crew. So like by these guys being on board and working with them, they're calling the shots on which ones they're going to hit. And they have the legal authority to do that. We have actually signed a few agreements with some island countries because they are so because a lot of these countries don't have their own Coast Guard or Navy. And if they do, like Fiji has a Navy, it's 4 ships. I saw the entire Fijian Navy when we pulled into Suva. Or maybe there was one that was out to sea, but like I saw like 90% of the Fijian Navy.
Wow.
So there have been agreements signed with some of these countries that the U.S. Coast Guard can just, if they find somebody violating, they can, in lieu of them being present, like slap them. So like Palau, I think, has that agreement. Independent Samoa made an agreement to that effect, and a few others have too. Though they do they do prefer to have shipwriters with them, just because there's, you know, for a lot of reasons. But one of the big challenges, and this brings us back to human trafficking actually a little bit. So because like Chinese nationals are one of the biggest, like they're highly involved in the fishing industry, whether they're committing crime or not. But the reality is most of these boats are going to have a Chinese captain. So the boat will almost always have a Chinese linguist aboard. When I was there, they had a U.S. Marine on board. He was on loan because they needed somebody who spoke Mandarin, who could speak to these captains. But one of the challenges when you get in there is most of their crew is not Chinese. You have Indonesians, you have Filipinos, and there's also on some of these fleets there is widespread like people getting lured on and then being kept on longer or being paid less and being kind of working in really bad conditions. Like, I mean, if you've seen like these lobster boats out here, like that's hard work and it's hard conditions. Yeah. It's nothing like some of these boats out there. They're filthy. They have roaches on them. They're unsanitary. It is miserable on some of these boats. They smell horrible. A Fijian officer that they were working with when the Harriet Lane's crew went on there had never actually done one of these boardings because, you know, limited resources. They don't really get out there that much. when she got on that boat, just because of like all the moving around and also the smell, she threw up. Like she could not handle it. And like, it's nothing that anybody made fun of her for. Cause like, it's real hard to be on these, like even, the US coasties who have done these boardings, they're still on each of these boats, kind of like holding it in like, like another one of these.
Yep.
But what one of the challenges there really is, and what I talk to people even on that crew, and one of the next steps is, it's hard to go after the IUU, but like they would sometimes like talk to these guys, like, because one of the boats that one of them went on, one of them told me like there was this kid who looked about 13, and I was trying to talk to him, and he spoke just a little bit of English, but I'm like, he's like, you okay here? Like, is this where you want to be? And he but he didn't speak a lot of English, and even if he did, he could have been too scared to be honest.
Yeah.
So like, we send these guys who speak Mandarin out there, but we haven't really been sending anybody who speaks Tagalog or like the many languages from Indonesia.
I've been saying that wrong my entire life now. I always thought it was pronounced Tagalog.
Nope, Tagalog. That's okay.
I just learned something new.
We're here to learn about the Pacific today.
Yeah.
So, no, but like, those linguistic gaps and trying to figure out even what's going on these boats.
Yes, that explains so much too. When I think about, when I was in the military, I went and took the language that was called the D-Lab, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, because I was going to switch my MOS to be a cryptological linguist. Yeah. And part of the training for that is you go up to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. Yep. And this is, it's like a world-class language center that teaches the military as well as people from state and other places. But you look at the list of languages they teach, and there's some of these, and you're like, why does the military need to know this language? No, this is like it kind of opens your eyes to why some of these languages you've never even heard of before.
Pacific's a big place.
Yeah, and of consequence.
Yes.
To the point where, hey, we got to have people that can speak the language, or at least communicate a little bit in there, enough to get information and understand how to keep some of this stuff under control.
Right, and this is an issue where we're just not there. And even if we do, like, when do you start? And then, like, if you do get on that boat and like you've got a crew of like 15 guys who you've decided they're trafficked, like. Then what do you do with them in the boat?
That's like, another interesting thing.
You in theory, you want to get them off the boat, you want to get them safe, and you want to make sure that like the people who have done this to them see justice. But it's so hard to get them to talk. And then where do we? I mean, they would make it work. Like, they would have probably all slept in the gym of the boat. Yeah. They would have been able to give them blankets, but I mean, it would have been. But then they'd have to sail somewhere, and then we'd have to figure out how to repatriate them. Yep. I mean, it's not like this has never been able to happen before. Sometimes, like, people have been rescued off of these boats, but usually in port at sea, this doesn't really happen that much because it's hard, and it's such a big, pervasive issue that all the world's governments are still trying to wrap their head around it, because the ocean has been so neglected, and because we've allowed a lot of these things out of convenience, a lot of terrible things to happen on the ocean.
It sounds kind of like the Wild West.
It is absolutely
like an equivalent of like 1800s American West, where you've just got a bunch of cowboys out there trying to figure out, and there's outlaws, and there's just, if you're the captain of a Coast Guard ship, you're basically the sheriff out there trying to do your best with not a lot of. And the other thing that you said that just kind of struck me is, I think most people, when they think about human trafficking, they think about women and young girls being trafficked for sexual reasons.
A serious problem, but in the grand scheme,
that doesn't happen. But I never even thought about males being trafficked for labor on boats.
So the truth is, I mean, if we're going to talk about human trafficking, like, that's what people think of. As a percentage, that's a small percentage of what most human trafficking is.
When you see the human trafficking numbers, you're like, gosh, there's that many. Where are they all at?
Most of what we're talking about is forced labor. People working on boats, people stuck in sweatshops.
It's like now those numbers make more sense to you when you see them.
Oh no, so
there can't be that possibly that many like whorehouses around the world housing.
And the answer to that is no, there are not. Yeah. But there are serious problems and like frightening things, and also like when we talked about like people getting into like drugs or IUU, like the people who are profiting off of that. Like if you're involved in one criminal enterprise, like I've definitely talked to officials who said like, yeah, we found connections between like drugs, IUU, like there's an ecosystem
it's
here.
It's like the mafia.
Yeah,
you're
like
into, if you're doing one thing, you probably got your hands in the other.
Because I remember even talking to one of the public affairs person that I was on the boat with, and real great person. But I remember she was kind of talking about like because there was a thing about like pictures of people and like pictures of some of the shipwriters who live on the island, and it's just like, well, like, and I was kind of thinking about like how safe it is to get some of their information out there because these are small islands. And she's like, well, this isn't like the drug trade. This isn't like people aren't dying over fish. And I'm like, that's not true. I like to give you some perspective. I was looking out on background, like when I was in Fiji, and this went back to, I think it was 2004. If anybody wants to read my article, it'll have the correct date. I'm talking here, but there were 4 people that were killed at a seafood factory, execution style, in the back of the head, and it was basically the investigators. Interpol got involved because it was a dispute between 2 rival Hong Kong triads over the illegal shark fin trade. So like, no, people do. Like people kill over control these rackets.
Thing.
Yeah, like these are people like it's their livelihoods, but like fish is not small business. It's it again, like for people who are working on these maritime things, like they're way ahead of it. But if you're new to this, it can shock you to really realize how deeply embedded into crime a lot of this is. Like my colleague Sean Williams and Danny Gold, who we were talking about this on the Write Up. They've got their the Underworld podcast, and they there was one episode where they were talking about this thing. It's like, and fish again, like with like different crime organizations. Like, why do fish keep coming up? And I actually did like a short episode with Sean, like about like, well, yeah, there's a lot of crime actually in fishing fleets because a lot of boats, a lot of things moving around, and like, it's been there for a long time. I mean, all the way back to like the mafia having like ties to fishermen, like, dropping people off in the harbor, like going out on a boat, having
just
weights.
Think it's such the oceans and the maritime tradition and naval vessels, like these are things that go back thousands of years. Like this world is rooted in very much the old world in a way that I don't think we see in most other areas of society.
No, like the ocean and the technology has changed, but a lot of things at sea have not changed in ways that I don't think people appreciate.
And the crime and just like, I think people when they when piracy became an issue, they're like, they think Captain Hook. And it's like, no, man, like piracy has been a thing for a long time. And I think that people don't think of pirates, even like Blackbeard and people like that. I think they have a conception in their head that is different than what reality was. And I think that reality is a lot closer to what modern day pirates are.
Sure.
Where it's illegal commerce, illegal shipping, illegal seizure of people and or boats. Like that's...
Well, also, so to give you also like another example, and like, I used the execution there, but there was a cell phone that was found in the back of a cab in Fiji years ago. And this led to like sprawling, like a New York Times investigation that was really good. A guy named Ian Urbina, who you should think about having on here. Because we'll probably get back to land during this conversation. He can tell you way more about the ocean.
Yeah.
But there was a grainy video on this cell phone of some guys on a boat with an AK-47 shooting people down the water. And that phone had been left there by a fisherman, a member of that. This was a fishing boat. And what we basically seem to have understand is that these guys were out in the Indian Ocean, probably kind of maybe, I don't know how close to like Pakistan or wherever, but like these guys the other guys had been in a dhow, a wooden boat, and they had rammed them because they were competing over fish. And then they just gunned them down the water. They had an AK-47 on board because fishermen actually get in fights, like rival fishermen. And as like I said, like as these fisheries collapse and there's less fish, like people will kill at the very least, people will like charge each other RAM and yell at each other. Like that's more common. Like this is an extreme case, obviously.
And I only laugh. It's a serious thing. I laugh just because it's like, yeah, man, you can go down to the local river here and see fishermen getting in an argument over one guy being in a spot over the other.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys aren't even doing it with their livelihoods at stake, and they're getting into arguments. I can only imagine when you're trying to feed your family.
But the scary question becomes, when does that become an international incident? So like there was an example a few years ago. I mean, it was, and I did a story on it. A Taiwanese vessel charged a Hawaii longliner, and actually like they threw paint on it, and they had to like damaged it, and they had to like scrape it up, and like it's hard to know exactly what all happened, because I did talk to the captain of the Hawaii longliner. It was the Robin II. Korean American family had that, but also they had Indonesian workers, though living under much better conditions than we were talking about with some of the other ones. Though no holiday. But yeah, this other ship, they thought that they had cut their line, because sometimes people do that, like, oh, somebody else has a line, then they'll either like cut it or sometimes like steal the fish off of it, like, oh, this looks good, it's not ours, but like we can make it ours. Like, you hope that you don't see that, like more people out there I think are like, I'm making fishermen sound like complete dirtbags. Most people who are out there are doing their best under difficult circumstances. But yeah, there's some people out there who cheat, and there's some people out there who are dangerous. But like, what happens when it's like a PLA vessel and like an American on there has a gun and he's just like, no. And I think I said PLA. I meant just Chinese in general.
Let's use that as a segue.
But we can use that as a segue. We sure can, because
let's talk China. I was telling you before we started this that I feel like I just keep coming back to China and Russia on every conversation.
But we're talking about the Pacific. You can't not talk about China.
Exactly.
It's not possible.
Well, so you're based in Hawaii. Hawaii, it hosts Indo-PACOM at Camp Smith, and you've got Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. These are major. You've already touched on it in this interview a little bit. These are Hawaii is a major strategic position for the United States of America and her interests. What does let me just call it the general threat of China? What does that look like for people in Hawaii, and how do they perceive China?
Well, that's. Let's make this as broad as possible.
Let's start broad and then
big. There's a lot to take that there. So I think I need to chop up that thing.
This isn't the first time I've done this to a guest. Where out of my own ignorance, I ask what I think is somewhat, and you're like, actually, there's a lot to unpack.
I think there's a lot of different things there, because there's different threats. And different things depending on how you look at, and also like, depending on what you see as the biggest threat, what sorts of solutions you're pushing for. Because you have your people who think the biggest threat is that we're not talking to one another and we've got guns drawn, so we need to get one another talking. Or you have people who think the biggest threat is that we need to be ready to just be bigger and scarier and make them not even think about it. You have your people who are, like I said, like people who are concerned about the fishing, like the ecological issues that we have there, trade, So I guess looking maybe not to Hawaii. Let's talk about like, we can get Hawaii specific, but I think actually like talking about America as a whole. One of the biggest issues. So when we're looking from the vantage of Hawaii and what the U.S. military is doing, and that's the military reporter, this is probably the easiest place to kind of look and then spread out from there. Because this is also what has a lot of people's interest. What we're really a lot of times talking about is the Western Pacific, the South China Sea, and then Taiwan Strait. And all of these places that are, that trade moves through. Like a third of all global trade moves through the South China Sea. And the busiest shipping lane after that, like including that, is the Taiwan Strait, like ships moving through there. So that's how Japan gets its stuff. Like how they're going to get their oil. Like Japan and Korea, their oil is going to be moving through there from somewhere else. And then like the business that we have that with them, like the oil that they need to do the things that to make the things they're making, do the things that they're doing that we're working with. Yeah. Yeah. So like, and also like in Hawaii, like our oil comes through the South China Sea, most of it, not from domestic, for complicated reasons that maybe we can revisit later. But like I said, we could go in so many different, we could talk for hours, but yeah, the movement, like freedom of movement through those areas and, territorial integrity. The Chinese have claimed pretty much the entire South China Sea as their exclusive sovereign territory through something that they call the 9-dash line. If you look at a map, people hear this sometimes, and then you'll say like, "Oh, South China Sea. I mean, shouldn't it kind of be theirs?" Which ironically, that's kind of a colonial name that that British people came up with. Like I
can't help but think about like the Gulf of America. Well, I guess if we name it America, then
right. But I mean, yeah, the Chinese didn't even call it that.
Yeah,
like it was such a and so many other people share borders with that, and that brings us back to the fishery issue. But yeah, like the movement of things and our ability to get our stuff. And what would happen if they decide we're going to control what moves through and where and how much all of you are going to pay. So like nailing down those supply chains and taking.
Is this impacting tariff conversations between the U.S. and China right now?
Probably not overtly, but this is part of it.
Like an underlying theme.
Oh yeah,
probably?
like the movement of how we get things and whose territory is who. This is very much threaded through all this, and also like and the issue of Taiwan and who that belongs to and how. Because the 9-dash line was actually, I think, drawn in the late 40s under the Republic of China under Chiang Kai-shek's government. Which also was kind of adorable for his government to be kind of like, yeah, all of this is ours. Like, like really, man, like you can barely your country's collapsing as you're fighting the communists. You can't manage this. But it leads to all these like disputes between the Philippines is the big one because they've been ramming, attacking fishing vessels that they say are fishing. Like they say that's IUU that. These fishermen on their canoes are illegally fishing in Chinese waters at these reefs that they've been fishing at, for generations.
Is it like the, one man's insurgent is another man's freedom fighter, like
a little.
Some of these illegal activities are kind of in the eye of the beholder a little bit?
Well, I mean, it is in the eye of the beholder, but in the eye of an international court that ruled in 2016, China's in the wrong.
Yeah. Does China recognize this international court? And this is where I'm really showing my ignorance here on this. But
China has called the ruling illegal, and they say that they don't recognize it. So that gets us into this complicated thing. Like everybody is making laws. Unfortunately, it would be great if we all agreed to what laws actually are, but laws are socially constructed.
Yep,
they're politically constructed, and laws are not worth the paper they're printed on. They're only worth the currency that we collectively give them. And
if you don't enforce a law, is it really a law?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And or if you write a law, so we have conflicting people. I mean, and to be fair here, like everybody's claims overlap in the South China Sea. Like Vietnam and the Philippines, they have overlapping claims. Indonesia has claims that overlap. Like everybody's claims are not like nobody is on the same page, but pretty much everybody agrees that China saying all of this is like is a little much.
Yeah,
just a bit more than a lot of people can take. But so that's a big thing, and also like access to possibly like mineral deposits and oil and things that could be under there. Whose territory is what and who's allowed to drill and mine. But yeah, movement of goods, presence of resources, where you get your stuff, how you get your stuff. And like Asia being kind of like the economic engine of the world today, we'd have real trouble. And I know there are people talking about like a lot more self-sufficiency for the American economy. That's fine and good. If I'm not going to take a position on that, but until that happens, like we are reliant on our economy to keep our trade relationship with Asia working. Like that's where it is. That's where the economics
That's what people
are.
have to understand is even if you are, and I think there's some really valid arguments of at least having the capability of being self-sufficient on most things. I think there's a very reasonable, it's like we could be self-sufficient on oil if we needed to, but there's reasons that we're not.
Yeah, but we are years out.
There's too many things that's not a switch that you flip and say, hey, we're independent now of all this stuff. We can't just secede from the entire world economic system and say we're self-sufficient now without literally the way that translates economically is lives lost and severe hardship for the American people if you don't do that the right way.
So yeah, but anyway, so that's where kind of like the rub is here with China is what people are worried about who see a threat there. Though, like I do try to be as neutral as I can because I actually do see some things from a Chinese point of view, and I think we can get into that because I think that there are even smart people who study China who I think misunderstand some things fundamentally about where they're coming from and how they're thinking. And it's not to justify what they're doing or what we're doing, but I think we just have to have some like ideas about where both sides are coming from because the biggest danger is that either side fails to understand the other. And that leads to something real bad happening. Because I can say confidently, and I do feel very confident about this, is that neither side wants a war. Neither side wants a conflict. And there's a lot of reasons why, even though there's saber rattling, actually somebody made a point, DC, when I was down there Friday, that I had not even considered about why this would be very difficult for China if this were to happen. But yeah, the concerns are like these economic concerns and what it can do to like our
what was
way
the
of
point
life.
the person brought up?
That the entire Chinese military today is staffed by children of the one-child policy generation. And if they go to war and a lot of people die, we talk about how the Chinese are willing to throw bodies at a problem because I think we study the Korean War. I'm not sure because they've never had to really do that. They know that like today
they're suffering population decline right now, right?
So I'm actually not sure about it. Even before somebody made that point, I'm not quite sure that they're that willing to throw that many bodies at a problem to the degree that people sometimes think that they would be. Because that would be a real problem. But getting back to like, so it's the issues kind of like questioning the status quo of like the law of the sea, like and them having, now by whole the world's largest navy. And like, new missile capabilities.
And one thing that I learned in a different interview is China has a law in the books that every commercial vessel that they have has to have the ability to be converted into a naval vessel.
Yes.
It has to have that capability. Every single one.
Yeah. So I said like by whole, it's the world's largest on paper with what they're counting.
Yeah.
But like their Navy is actually, in their maritime capability, their ability to mess things up on the sea, mess with the global supply chain if
they swing a big hammer for sure.
They do. Yeah. It's huge. And like, like that's something people should understand. It's not hypothetical. They've got a lot of these things already. So that's what people are worried about, when they see threats here. Now, you could also make some real good arguments that we have at times poked the bear and like done things that have been unproductive. I'm not going to defend one side or the other than like, they've harassed Filipino fishermen, but we've also exerted, things on friends and allies and push them to accept bad deals in this neighborhood too.
Yep.
And oftentimes when we've done, the Chinese have been happy to point to it. And frankly, like, if we did that and they see it and they point it out, like, I can't get mad at them for that. Like the Americans deserve to have that like highlighted if that happens.
Same thing happens in Africa right now in many different African countries where the Chinese and Russian are very happy to point out American shortcomings in some of these countries to people that are generally in a difficult situation. And, and it's that way. I mean, much of you could speak to this better than I can, but I know that much of Southeast Asia is still very much impoverished and, are very much focused on basic subsistence.
Right. No, and like, and China is a business opportunity for a lot of these countries, and I,
they're going to go what's going to put to the place that puts food on their table, right?
Well, and the truth is, most countries across the Pacific and Asia, they want to have both. These countries may gravitate a little bit more toward China or more to the U.S. Most seem to kind of gravitate a little bit more toward the U.S. in terms of like warm relations with diplomats and like who they kind of get along with, and certainly in terms of militaries. With militaries, most of them prefer to have like a stronger relationship with the U.S. military. Also, because China is closer, like as kind of an insurance policy. Like, we want to trade with China, we want to have that, but we also, if they start, pushing in a little bit more and demanding more and more, like maybe we say like, hey, maybe the next carrier group that comes through, maybe they dock here, just so that we remind them, like,
another example of how the U.S. Navy is used to shape policy.
Right. But and not just our own policy. Other people will leverage that.
Exactly.
Like they know when they want to, they know exactly when they want one of our ships to visit them.
Yep.
And when they do, it sends a signal. But that, I think, also, like, one of the things that I think people should think about with China, and this gets lost in conversations, I think, a lot. China is in the Pacific. We discuss it as being a regional bully sometimes, and I've talked to Japanese diplomats, Korean diplomats from a lot of these countries, and they feel that way. They do. I mean, they have their complaints about the United States, which they've been perfectly happy to share with me. But yeah, like a lot of them would say that, like, yeah, we want the U.S. here as a counterbalance, but we also need you guys to be talking to one another. Like, we can't.
They also don't want to be caught in the middle.
No, they don't.
Militarily or something like that, or even in a trade war, I imagine.
But one of the things about China that I think is worth dialing in on is kind of the way they view themselves in the world. Because I think I hear conversations, and like, it's not wrong that they have a lot of these plans, but like, I sometimes hear stuff where it's like, it sounds almost like they're twirling their mustache, or even worse, like some of these conversations sound a little bit like Yellow Peril-y, like Fu Manchu stroking the beard, like evil, devious, Orient, like some of the stuff I'm hearing these days sometimes delves a little bit into that. I'm like, well, okay, look, there are issues there, but like, let's get a grip a little bit about like what's going on over there and what motivates them. And I think a big phrase that you need to hear is the century of humiliation, which is a big part of like their narrative of what they lived through before the founding of the People's Republic of China. You had the imperial powers like Europe, Britain especially, the Opium Wars, getting everybody hooked on these drugs, people coming in and taking territory. Germany had colonies there, everybody was taking what they wanted. Foreigners treated China as a playground. Japan, everybody took a slice at various different points. And they had to swallow that for so long. And, they overthrew, They overthrew their last dynasty. They had their warlord era where, people were fighting, and also like various Western countries were pitting their warlords against each other. Arms runners were moving guns in and out. You had American patrol boats going up their rivers, policing. You had literal like British police officers. Not everybody knows Hong Kong. But like in Shanghai, there were different parts of Shanghai that were different neighborhoods for all the different foreigners who lived there. A lot of them with their own police. So like they have a long history of people going in there and not respecting their territorial integrity. Now now they have risen as to become from that to be a first like a huge economy, like an economic powerhouse. A military power that can have a base in Djibouti. Like they have bases in Africa and they have interests in Africa. Like it's like sometimes we get upset when we see them go somewhere, but I'm like, look, we're everywhere and they have interests everywhere too. That is absolutely the pot calling the kettle black if you're upset about them being somewhere. So when they hear all this stuff about like, you got to play by the rules, you got to like, they do not enjoy lectures from the people who like did that for years.
Most self-respecting nations don't.
No. So like, and I mean, and that does not mean that
Yeah.
I think it's cool that the China Coast Guard goes and shoots water cannons at Filipino fishermen and rams them. That doesn't mean that I think all that's cool. But when people talk about China, I think those are things that you should have in the back. You got to have that in the back of your mind for how they're and how they perceive when we're talking to them about stuff, because those are lectures that
to include international court rulings and things
so
like that.
When they hear that, like these are the international rules, and they're kind of like, oh, you mean like that? Like what, man?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we can play that game if you want to, is I'm sure what they're thinking. Well, I think maybe it's helpful. What are, because this is such a broad topic, what are, from your perspective in your reporting, what are the biggest threats from China that are real? And what are the biggest threats that are maybe misconceptions or not true?
Okay. I mean, I think most of the things that we report on are, they are real threats, but I think they do get inflated or misunderstood. Because one of the things that I do hear all the time is like, oh, they've got a 500-year plan. Everything is planned out. And
they think in centuries, we think in 4-year cycles.
And if that were true, they wouldn't have to lay off their military top officials every couple years. Like they wouldn't have to reshuffle the Politburo. Like no, like China is factionalized like any other place. It's a big place. It's a huge place, and you still have regional biases between like the different regions. Like Han China, like it's mostly Han Chinese, but like you think of that being homogenous, but like similar things, like different, but like similar. Like I mean, we were talking about this, but like Californians and Oregonians hate each other. You know,
I'll take your word for it.
I mean, not like really hate each other,
but I get it.
You know, like, well, I mean, so like you lived in the Midwest, though, like different parts of the Midwest, like how people
we're all
like,
too nice out there. We don't want to upset anybody. It's like, oh, sure, you betcha.
But you know what I'm talking about.
You want to take my car, I guess. I mean, if you need it.
But like there are regional differences in a place that is that big. But I mean, that's I think the other thing is that most of Chinese history was the quest to unify China. It had been such a violent place, you know, dynastic wars up into the 20th century, up until the Communist Party got it. Like they really are, and whatever you may say about them, about human rights and about all these things. And again, like this isn't like to whitewash any of that, but just like as a fact and how a lot of Chinese people see it, like this has been after the Great Leap Forward and after like all those things, after the dust settled with all those bad things, for decades now, it's been really good comparatively to what's come before it. Like people can travel, like economies are growing, standard of living around most of the country has gotten better. And yeah, they don't have warlords coming through the streets periodically, like just having their way with people, taking what they want. Like it is not a country full of banditry, and to do that in a place that is so large and like so diverse, because there's still so many dialects, you know, speaking Cantonese, like, you know, like we talk like Mandarin, like we don't say just, sometimes people will just say speaking Chinese, but like, no, you got Mandarin is like the biggest one. You still have Cantonese, you still have all these cultural differences. They persist, they matter. And also like, this is also, we were talking on the way here, and I know it's been brought up on the on the pod before, you know, keeping track of the Chinese diaspora. Part of the reason why they do this is because Dr. Sun Yat-sen, you know, the father of modern China, who like helped oust the monarchy, he was educated in Hawaii. He grew up there, along with a lot of other like revolutionaries who grew up abroad. So like power over the vastness of China is potentially fragile. Like, you know, they have gotten together like, you know, a few decades, and you know, when they celebrate the anniversary, the 100 years of the PRC, they're hoping that will continue to have been a time of prosperity, where things kept getting better. It is definitely something they think about, like what if discontent brews and what if it happens from out there, because that's how the last monarchs were overthrown. And
they know that we would have a vested interest in fomenting that.
Sure. No,
sort of
exactly. and like, yeah, bring it back to Hawaii too. Like, he's not the only president that like spent time there, like of another country. Like the first president of the Republic of Korea, Ri Syngman, when he went into exile when the Japanese colonized the Korean Peninsula, he went into exile in Hawaii. Revolutionary. So both of these people had made multiple attempts to try to like get their oppressors out of power. But when it failed, they had to go lick their wounds in Hawaii, in North America, and the overseas Chinese communities, not just them as individuals, like the communities there they raised money, they raised funds, they got public opinion against it to like support these things. Like China, like the country, because a lot of times, I guess that's another point really, is when people talk about China in scare quotes, we're talking about the PRC, that government. China itself is a place with deep history. It's ancient. And we're also talking about a large diaspora around the world.
I feel the same way about Russia. You know what I mean? Well, it's like, I got to separate.
But also in a very big way, like even like places with like large ethnic Chinese population, like Singapore, full of ethnic Chinese people, but we don't think of that as China. But like in a way, like
they don't really like being called Chinese there. They want to be known as Singaporeans, correct?
Well,
or is that
no? So like if you are ethnically, because they have different ethnic groups there, so the Chinese there are still happy to be Chinese, but they like a word that was used when I was talking to an expert about this, about Singapore actually specifically, is that they are culturally Chinese but not politically Chinese.
Okay.
And yeah, you see that also in Malaysia and like lots of other places across the Pacific, Solomon Islands. Like there's a bunch of Chinese people there. They're and obviously here, if you're in the United States, the Chinese in Hawaii, like a lot of Chinese, oldest Chinatown in, well, like, back to like, is it America or not? But like, in the recognized U.S. states, the oldest Chinatown in America is Honolulu Chinatown, because that's where people came to work in the port and also to work on the plantations across the Hawaiian Islands.
It makes sense, but if you would have asked me to guess, I would have said like maybe San Francisco or something.
Well, because
that's interesting.
Well, you have to remember, like this is the age of the sail.
Yeah.
They had to stop somewhere.
It's just literally geographically closer.
You had to stop. Yeah. Like if you were on your way to San Francisco, like there's a good chance that you stopped off in Hawaii on the way.
Trans-Pacific flights were not a thing until very recently.
No. So yeah, and that is also why the U.S. became so interested in Hawaii in the first place, and why other colonial powers were everybody.
Japan was very interested.
Britain was very interested. The French Navy looted Honolulu once. There was a Russian coup attempt sort of at one point.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Imperial Russia, though, like it was not authorized by the Tsar. That's the other thing. Like people would go out there and just like, because there wasn't a phone. Like people would go out there like a Royal Navy officer also like did try to take over. And word got back from like once word got to Britain, and they're like, we have diplomatic relations with the Kingdom of Hawaii. What are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
Like you can't do that. Because you have to remember that there was once like the Kingdom of Hawaii. It was an international entity that other people over time recognized after it became like, once it used to just be the Sandwich Islands, but at a certain point, like it became a consensus that like, oh no, this is a country, and it's a really important port where people stop. The whaling industry was huge there. You had a bunch of New Englanders moving out there to move to. So yeah, and like a lot of that history was lost in the Lahaina fires, because Lahaina was a major whaling port. Just this mix of cultures and mix of people there. But yeah, like that's all these diasporas coming together in one place, because it was a trade center and like logistics hub for all these people going back and forth. But yeah, that's how you get the father of China being a graduate at Iolani High School, in Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, it's true to this day that you've got a lot of people that end up serving within the PRC or the PRC military, who are, Harvard educated right down the road in Boston, have, went to Caltech, went to Stanford. Like that's a thing that continues to happen. And I will say, I know this is probably one of my more hot, spicy takes, but there's been recent scrutiny about what type of student visas we give out.
Right.
I do think, considering where things are at right now, I'm not saying we should just completely revoke all student visas. I do think it does bear scrutiny. Like it makes sense to maybe take another look at how and why we do student visas.
Sure, but I mean, on a personal note, because we were actually just talking about a friend of mine who just became an American officially, and I don't want to live in a world where we never met.
We need those exactly. We need those people there. It's just like, I agree with we need to look at how we're doing it. I don't want to get rid of it. We can't. It lessens what you potentially get out of a university education if there's only people from your own country there. But I guess what I mean is like I empathize with the thought process of like, hey, this is potentially being exploited by countries that have an adversarial relationship with us at times. We should look at what our processes are around it.
Though also, I think one of the things that I've thought about a lot is how much China has changed specifically over the last decade. Because there were a lot of people who said like we shouldn't have been friendly with them early on in the 20th century. We should have seen them as an enemy right off the bat. And I think that is wrong. I think a lot of things changed on both sides.
I mean, we went to war with them, not like against them, but you know what I mean? Like we were fighting Japan a lot, like the China-Burma India theater of operations in World War II. That was American and Chinese people fighting side by side.
Oh yeah. Well, but that was the Nationalist Army and the CBI, though there was coordination between Mao's guerrilla army and the OSS. Yeah. And it never went to full cooperation, but there were Americans on the ground with them. We could maybe talk about my Sidney Rittenberg, who I talked to. Really interesting story. It's actually, yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah,
that can frame this conversation.
Fascinating.
Yeah, Sidney Rittenberg was the first American to join the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay.
And I got the chance to interview him before he passed a few years ago. I think I interviewed him in 2015. And I remember actually thinking a while back, like, man, like, I think he was wrong about a bunch. But then I went back and actually read the interview and what he actually said. And I was like, oh man, actually, no, he was right about a lot of this stuff. And he was warning about some of the other stuff. Because one of the things that he said is, this was kind of right after Xi Jinping came into power. And he was saying, I'm really liking his anti-corruption stuff because there's a problem out there with that. But one of the things he also said was like, I really hope that he kind of like backs off the South China Sea thing and like lets people, do their thing, like respecting neighbor, like stop harassing your neighbors. Stop being so belligerent with Japan. Like I know there's bad blood there, but maybe those were his thoughts. Like, we like they are doing things that are causing Japan to remilitarize because they're scaring them. Yep. They're doing he was a little bit more critical of China than I remember him being. His story is that he was from pretty early on a communist, like a communist. Another friend of mine, I remember, like interviewed him one time and like mentioned times that he had been interviewing some old like Communist Party of America guys, and Sidney kind of narrowed his eyes and looked at me and said, "There are no more communists in America." Because like when you say communist, like people wearing T-shirts, like there are a lot of people
Che Guevara T-shirt. There
are a lot of people who are communist chic, and I'm sure there are some people who are like real, but like a lot lot of people say
champagne socialists,
right? Yeah. So and that because that's not what he was. Yeah. He was like serious.
Yeah.
But he was motivated because he was a Jewish guy, grew up in the South, and as a kid he witnessed like savage police violence against a black man like in South Carolina, and asked his aunt about like what's that, and they were just like, oh yeah, that's just the way things are. And then he looking at the factories and stuff, and he got involved in unionizing workers, like black workers especially. But just was real mad about how things were going, and but when the war broke out, World War II broke out, like he was far more anti-fascist than he was anything else. So he decided, but he also he decided to enlist before he could get drafted because he wanted to pick his job, and he tested for being good at languages. And the irony is he requested Chinese because he thought like if he learned Japanese, they'd tap him for occupation duty, and he wanted to get back to America as soon as possible to get back into this. Huge irony with how things turned out, because what he did is, he went out there and he saw a lot of the corruption of the warlords and like was just real unhappy with it. But he also started meeting people and like reading some of the underground communist newspapers. And he's just like, I need to get up there. I need to meet these guys. He got discharged out there and he went to live in Shanghai for a bit and also saw more like corruption, more poverty. He's like, man, I don't like this, and like I need to get up there. But he met the right people. He was like, yeah, we can connect you with those folks. He made his way up to Yan'an, and there were still a few U.S. military people up there, like active duty, like intel guys and OSS guys. So he got to know them, and a bunch of them became sympathizers of the communists. Some of them did not. Some of them stayed pretty ardently like, Reds are no good. Yeah. But I mean, it was a thing. And like, this was very divisive throughout the Civil War there. But he ended up becoming like, buds with like Zhou Enlai and Mao, and he was their interpreter. But one of the things that he told me and that he said before is like, when they had interactions with the Americans, they kept trying to tell them like, look, I know you guys are back in Chiang, but we got to tell you, he's going to lose. And when this is over, we want to talk more because we want to have bilateral relations because we don't want to be dependent on Stalin. Stalin's an asshole. Yep. Like we would like to work with you.
Doesn't get enough credit for how big of an asshole he was.
But like they knew that. They're like, we don't like, we want to have trade. Like we want to be cool with you guys. Like, yes. Yeah. Like you guys fought the Japanese. Like we still remember that. And like, we did work together. The Flying Tigers provided air support to some people, like some of our friends who are still alive. Like we don't have a beef with you. Not really. Like you're not really the problem here.
We've never really colonized any place in China.
Well, we have. Well, like I said, American gunboats and stuff like that. Like there were.
I wouldn't call that infringing on their sovereignty. Sure. I don't think we've done straight up colonization the way that you would look at the British.
We didn't have. Yeah, no, we didn't have anything like Hong Kong. We didn't have anything like that. So no, like they wanted to work with, similar also to Ho Chi Minh, even down in Vietnam, said like, look. We'd like to have a relationship with the Americans because like, we don't want to be just a Soviet satellite. But the problem, I think, with a lot of that, and Sydney's read, and I think what a lot of people's read was, so like Tito and Yugoslavia got to have that deal. But this, I think, really does, I think, again, like the Oriental, like looking at that and being like, nah, they can't think for themselves. They're Stalin's little puppets. They're trying to trick us. This is a Oriental trick. These like, so people back in Washington, even though some people who are working out in the region probably thought,
it's kind of funny how much sentiment has changed because there used to be that sentiment. It was a very real thing 70 years ago.
No, like
now today it's like we're all like,
I know. I mean, like
they're definitely smarter than us, and that kind of scares me.
I know, and like it feels gross to even use that kind of archaic language, but I have to. It was a
real. That was the sentiment at the time.
That was how people felt. But like we missed a bunch of chances to just kind of like, have that relationship. I mean, whatever they did aside, but like bring that kind of like to how Sydney talked about this. Even like in the 2000s, we had like the Chinese Navy came to RIMPAC as an invited guest at least 3 times. I think 2014, 2016, and 2014, 2016, and they were disinvited in 2018 because that's when things were starting to really pop up in the South China Sea. So I got that. And also, like I've been on the ground with joint U.S. Army PLA exercises that were for disaster relief training. Yeah, I did 2 on the ground. One at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and one at Camp Raylia, Oregon National Guard base down in.
That would be news to most people that we've had PLA troops on American soil.
We have, and and everybody said actually that there, and I even talked to years later like a counterintelligence guy, and they were there too. Like obviously everybody's looking, and there were guys who were trying to like try to find some things, but they said like even that aside, the training was real. Yeah, like the sharing of how to respond to disasters, how to search rubble, how to do things. like that was real training.
Yeah.
Like one of the things, like, I mean, the Chinese are really good at going through rubble because of earthquakes. Like the PLA is really. The PLA
I was going to
really,
say they've had some devastating earthquakes out there.
The PLA, it is very good at disaster relief, and there's a lot to learn from them about that. But I remember one of the things that they actually did is like they were training on this, and they were realizing that kind of, just because of like genetic history, like they had like these tubes, but like, oh, these are for like Chinese nostrils. Some people have narrower nostrils, and we can't like we need to maybe rethink, like if we go somewhere else too, because they helped out after the Nepal earthquake.
Yep.
Both the Chinese and U.S. military sent people to help. They had a coordination cell. They weren't working side by side, but like they were working together.
It's not just humanitarian missions that we've coordinated with them. Obviously, famously, the space.
Also we mentioned piracy earlier. Counter piracy out in the Indian Ocean, going after the Somali pirates. PLA Navy was out there along with the U.S. I mean, not working, as closely together as some of the others, but they were sharing. They were sharing what they were seeing. They were talking to one another, and we were on the same side. And like in terms of like the GWAT years, like they had their own concerns about terrorism too, like citizens that had gone abroad to join Al Qaeda or like other militant
Chinese
groups.
citizens in ISIS.
Yes, so there were a lot of times where we were working together, and that is also one of the other things where like people talk about this as a big civilizational clash that has been like centuries in the thinking in century like this this is this inevitable destiny that we're gonna fight one another. I think that's a dumb fucking way to think of this. Doesn't mean that like you shouldn't be watching and that like there aren't real threats, but I hear language about China in that way sometimes that make me kind of uneasy, because I'm like, we need to lower the temperature here, because we can't have that. Even like, General Berger, he was one of the architects of the reorganization of the Marine Corps, which is kind of starting and like taking shape in Hawaii. One of the things he said is like, part of this is a strategy of deterrence. If we get to the situation where we actually have to do these things, the strategy has failed. Like if we get to the point where we are shooting missiles to one another, like we need to position and be so good.
Strategy, right? Where the point is to not use them. Right.
And that lot to say about that, and a lot to critique if you're against that. Like, but like that is the mindset on both sides of this. Like it's who can deter the other from doing it. And even with Taiwan, like they want to have a military that they say is capable of militarily taking Taiwan. The reality is they want to convince the Taiwanese that they just want to be part of China. Like the farthest they would want to go maybe is a blockade, I think. I don't think that there are many people, other than maybe a few people, who just really feel the need to test themselves. Like soldier, we have a generation of like some younger soldiers and sailors Marines who have never been to a war yet, and they want theirs. And I a buddy I'm going to meet up with tonight, a guy I was embedded with during the Coffee or Die days. I remember when he was getting ready to get out, and like some things were popping off when things were popping off between Iran and Israel after just October 7th, and some of his guys, he was at the 82nd at the time, they were kind of like, do you think we could go? We could do that. And he's like, you don't want that, man.
No.
Like that's not what you want. Cause he was there when the K-1 base in Kirkuk got hit with 32 rockets, and they got, one person died.
Ballistic missiles.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've told a lot of people is RPKs and RPGs and mortars.
Nothing
and
like
those
this.
are one thing.
Yeah.
Ballistic missiles are another.
Yeah.
You don't want any of that smoke.
No, and I mean, if you talk to most people on either side of this, like anybody who's like sane and got their head screwed on, it's not what we want. No.
Yeah. And I want to say, like, I am fully on the, like, communism sucks. Capitalism is a better system, flawed in its ways, but the better system.
Sure.
All that being said, though,
well,
when you look at the history there, though, I do wonder if McCarthyism so scared us away from, instead of just being anti-Soviet Union, we became unfriendly toward anybody that had that system, that economic system, to where we could have made friends along the way that would have made us in the long term more strategically powerful.
Oh, I think absolutely, because
Was
like
it
again,
short-sighted?
well, I think so, absolutely. And again, like I said, like we did that with Yugoslavia, and like that worked fine. But like, but I mean, it is more than that, because that was fine because they were white. I mean, I just don't. There's no other way to explain that.
Well, I don't know, because Soviet Union was primarily white too, and they were definitely the bad guys for most of.
No, but they were the ones being hostile. Yugoslavia reaching out and saying we're not with them.
Yeah,
like they were able to do that, and they were able to convince them that they have their own, that they were autonomous and could, like, they had their own agency, and they were able to convince people. And because those were partisans who would bled alongside.
I was going to say there was probably a greater cultural understanding there, because they were a European country that, like, to your point, you've brought up multiple times, we just simply didn't understand most of Asia.
But like there were people like in the OSS who very famously, people who worked on the Deer team, who worked with the Viet Minh.
By the way, the OSS is like some of my favorite history. Like it is, like, I could read about the OSS all day long.
Like the veterans of the Deer team, like told them okay, you don't have to side with the Viet Minh, but like the thing that you don't want to do is side with the French when they come back. Like you don't, like, they're going to lose. Like the French are going to come back, they're going to try to take it, and they're going to fail. Like, by
the way, do you know, like, that is some of the most insane history I ever kind of happened across. Is, you think France, right? Occupied by Nazi Germany. Horrible period in history for them. Many people died. You think that they're probably pretty war weary by the time they're liberated in 1945, right? Nope. Literally that same year, they're taking the Morocco was still a French colony at that time, taking the Moroccan Goumier, who were actually the first people. They were from the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. They were actually the first Allied forces into Nazi Germany, because they went in the back door through the Alps, because they had all these amazing mountaineering skills. They also, like, raped and pillaged their way across Italy. They did some horrible things. They were also the first to penetrate Nazi Germany. Well, they took those guys and just immediately went into Vietnam and started shit there. I always, in my mind, the Vietnam War started in like 1954 when we started sending advisors over there.
Oh no!
And knew the French were there. They were there literally the same year that they were liberated.
45.
Like, that's insane to me. What are you guys thinking?
I'll tell you what I think it is on that. It's after you get your ass kicked that hard and get occupied by Germany.
Looking for a win?
Well, yeah. Well, no, to be like, we're still an empire.
We need a win. We're going to go fight a counterinsurgency that we.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it was a great plan.
We've got the benefit of retrospect here.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I'm sure that's what de Gaulle was thinking. I'm like, we'd like our empire back. Yeah. We never ceded this. Like. And also, like, like the Vichy French authorities were still in charge of Vietnam up to a lot. Well, on paper, the Japanese were really running it by that time. But yeah, there was a mix. There were still a lot of, like, French officials still in place. So I mean, yeah, it was enough that they still felt like people there still cook baguettes. Like banh mi. Yeah. They're like that's still culture, and there were enough people that they still had a base of support. But that's also what prolonged it, because they had enough people that would still rally to them, but obviously more people who were done. Kind of like, the French. You had to run. You were one of our colonial masters of many, and you lost. Sorry, you're not welcome back. And that's what happened. Though it's funny because, like, these days, the French Navy has been back to Vietnam doing port visits. Yeah, we have. One of the things that crossed over, bring it back to, like, this regional issue, like you had, like, generations of Vietnamese military brass who had experience fighting the Americans. As of now, the only people that they have ever fought a war with, well, okay, now we're past the generations of people who fought the Americans. You have the people who fought in Cambodia against the Khmer Rouge, Chinese backed, and who fought border conflicts with China. You have people who have more experience fighting China than America now within the Vietnamese military. And that's kind of a culture shift there. which is not to say that they have any interest in doing it again. And they still want to have like dialogue with the Chinese. But, you know, like when you talk to them about that, like, you know, like the Americans, like, okay, yeah, like that was one of the wars, like for like that, it was a big divisive war that really tore our country apart and like all the tumult that's associated with it. But for back in Vietnam, in a lot of ways, like the Vietnam War, like, oh yeah, that was one of them. You guys were there for a while after the French.
Yeah.
And then like, because yeah, there are people who think like there's like a lot of bad blood. Like, no, if you go there, like people love having Americans visit. They'll show you around. Very like unless you lived in like, you know, I mean, they've sent reporters, you know, back to My Lai where there's like people who like
probably a little bit stronger.
Yeah, there are people who have bad memories, but like your average person in Vietnam, it's just like, yeah, that was just one more of those wars. Things are good now, though. You can go to McDonald's in Hanoi. Yeah. So like so like that hatchet, I think, has been buried.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about China. We've talked obviously everything going on with the environmental crisis in Hawaii from Red Hill and all of that. You know, this is all more of your more recent reporting. You actually spent a lot of time in the Middle East.
Well, I don't want to overstate how much time I spent in the Middle East, but yeah, no, I spent time on the ground. I've been in and out of the region at various points.
We've hung out in Erbil together.
We have, and I'm hoping to go back at some point to hang out with friends back there. Like maybe actually take some time to just hike and see things and not worry about work.
Yeah. That same trip, I think that I met up with you on No, that was a different trip actually, because that one I was there when we met up. That was my brother was with me.
Yes.
There was a different trip that I did where the fixer that I was using.
Yep.
He took me up into the Barzani Mountains.
Yes.
And, like did an awesome like hike up into this beautiful like gorge and met with some Iranian Kurdish people who were up there and did this like sit down round table with them up in the
wildlife photographers, right?
Yeah. Yes. Did you see that piece?
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. I loved it. Yeah,
it was such a cool experience. And
you guys saw that crazy crab up there in the mountain?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. That was the first time that I realized that like if you need to go to the bathroom on a road trip up there, you stop at the local mosque to go to the bathroom, and that was just like, are you sure it's cool? Like, am I allowed to? Like,
totally.
This isn't my religion. I'm just gonna go in there and like take a piss in their holy but it's like, no, that's not.
It's a bodily need.
Yeah,
and this is a community space.
Yeah, it just felt like I'm a Christian going to my sole reason for going into your holy, No. I remember. Yeah, I did the same thing at one point. I've taken a piss at a mosque. Yeah,
but that's what you do.
Yeah, and you see it a lot on social media too, like American military veterans that are like, rose-colored glasses about Iraq. Like, oh, if we go back, like, dude, you can go book a ticket right now. You can go. Like, maybe not specifically to the same neighborhood you patrolled, depending. Like I still wouldn't go to Sadr City. Wasn't a nice place before we invaded. It's not nice place after. I wouldn't go there if that's where you were hanging out in your Iraq war days. But like, you can fly into Erbil, you can fly into Baghdad right now. And be smart, but
and also be smart. But like, I've been hearing that like coffee shops have been reopening in Mosul, and that reconstruction has been clocking pretty good. And people are pretty.
And they're not rebuilding from American occupation; they're rebuilding from ISIS.
Yeah. Well, we blew a lot of that stuff up, but
they've had a rough go.
Yes, but point being told that like they're pretty happy to have ISIS gone. They are getting their economy humming, and a lot of people would be perfectly happy to sell you a coffee. Though, be careful. But
and that's just one of those. It just breaks my heart when I think about some of those, because we didn't go out of our way to destroy cultural. Historical sites while we were occupying Iraq. ISIS, what they did in northern Iraq and specifically the old city of Mosul, which is I've been there before. It's
a tragedy, something that can never be given back.
It can't. Yep, exactly. And that sucks. But I mean, for you, where did your beat in the Middle East originate from? Like, what was your first sort of assignment that led you to that part of the world?
I never really had like assignments, just kind of an interest. The first time I ever set foot on ground was actually, and this is actually probably when I ended up really leaning toward like, I'm probably going to be a journalist. I was in college. I had just gotten medically disqualified from ROTC, and was kind of like wrestling with like, what is a guy with a history degree gonna do now that I'm not gonna get commissioned as an officer? Like, I got to find like, something to do. But there was a study abroad course in Dubai. It was a 1 month course. We had a thing at Pacific Lutheran University called J-term. And I went, and one of the professors, actually, interestingly, like as an aside, Cliff Rao, who unfortunately passed a few years ago, his father had been my grandfather's professor, on my mom's side, like on the Norwegian, Scandinavian side. And he remembered my grandpa Hans as like, this GI who had come back from World War II. So he knew my grandpa as a little kid. But anyway, I went on that trip with him, and it was a journalism and art. You could pick one or the other credit, and it was just about storytelling. And yeah, I got to finally see things on the ground that I'd been hearing about from friends of mine who had been there, been reading about in the news, and got to see the Middle East up front for myself. Met an Afghan soldier that was working by the Dubai Creek at like a souvenir stand. Talked to him about getting wounded in the leg and getting out of Dodge because he was afraid of the Taliban. Like saw a lot of people wearing their pakuls and like a lot of visibly Afghan people, but people from all kinds of places, and just really got the chance to really take it in. I mean, there's a long story about like how I got like tied in the Middle East and interested in what we were doing and how people were. I mean, I like even through my church, like, meeting refugees, like supporting refugees and like meeting people from the region. Like this goes kind of back to my Lutheran upbringing. Like that's just part of it. I think you've kind of had similar experiences. Like
we both come from Norwegian. We're ethnic Norwegians,
yes.
Culturally American.
Yeah, but I mean specifically if like
Lutheran,
Lutherans, like if you were a Lutheran in the 90s, you probably met refugees at some point. Like that was just. It's like very much, especially like in Minnesota, but like I grew up in Oregon. But yeah, like I'd met people from like these parts of the world. Like I'll shift even like what really I think really got me very, very interested in all of this. Because I guess it always for people our age has to come back to 9/11.
Yeah.
The year that happened and like what really did get me hooked into all of this. I was, I think 12 years old when 9/11 happened. And I remember my math class really vividly throughout the course of that year because it was taught by Mr. Dillon, Marine, Vietnam veteran. But some of my classmates, the class that I sat with, I was a bit socially awkward. So I ended up at the refugee table, actually, like all the other like kids who were immigrant and refugees specifically. There was Karmand, Iraqi Kurdish. His father had carried him out during the Anfal genocide. Or no, not the Anfal. Or was it anyway, right after the Gulf War? Had to when all the Kurds had
influx
to flee. So like he'd come from there. There was a Somali kid. There was somebody from the Balkans. But then shortly after 9/11, a new student transferred in, Rauf, who they made sure to tell us before he started classes, like, hey, you have a new classmate. He's from Afghanistan. The Taliban killed his dad. Like
they're like very certain this is definitely not the Taliban
right.
You're looking for.
They really I'm sure very unfortunately like he had to transfer because he had problems at another school after 9/11. I'm sure.
Yep.
They didn't say it, but like that's probably what happened. But no, like I sat with them and like heard their stories and like very formative year right after.
Makes you 9/11. Curious about the world outside your small town.
Right. And
I don't know if were you in a small town or
Portland, Oregon.
So not a small town.
No, not so much.
Not a major metropolitan area, but not.
Well, but yeah, big enough, and big enough that we like. So what's funny about Portland is it is like one of the whitest cities in America, but also like a fair amount of refugee resettlement out there also. So while, a lot of white faces, but also a lot of different people. Like it's
a lot of white people that hate white people.
Yeah, there are. And I'm not going to get,
I will make that joke.
No, it's true. When we
put you in an awkward position with your other.
No, it's true. But like, no, but I mean, and I also grew up like with like my godparents were Chinese American. So like I was used to seeing people who looked differently and not like thinking like, oh, that's weird. It's like, oh, and just more thinking, oh, that's interesting. So bringing it back to Dubai, going out there, like I did a little bit of writing on kind of issues that were there, like because I met like Iranians who were living and working there, and like ooh, like so like there's a lot of Iranian trade here, and a lot of like. And like walked by the building that was like the Iranian trade office there. So I did a little bit of that, did some work on.
That's the interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but that's one of the interesting things that I never realized until I went there is those Gulf states, Gulf nations. When you go there, you think that, okay, if you go to the UAE or, like there, everybody that works at the gas station or the hotel check-in counter or whatever is that here in America, I guess there's some exceptions, but for the most part, American employees are the people everywhere you go. In those places, they basically import all of their workers. So you don't actually meet a lot of people. If you're just in normal everyday life, you don't meet a lot of people that are from Qatari or UAE or
Emiratis. You don't meet many.
You're meeting Malaysians and Iranians and Pakistanis.
Now through the class, I did. I definitely interacted with plenty of Emiratis. Yeah. But like a crazy thing that I learned about like there is license plates numbers. If you had less digits, that meant you were more important.
Oh.
And like if like don't touch that car, like do not get in a collision with that car.
That's a 3-digit license plate right there.
I saw number 6 while I was there, parked at one of the malls.
That's royalty, isn't it?
Yeah. So like,
why are they at the mall?
Because
they have people for that.
Well, no, because people go to the malls. Also, like that's also where a lot of things happen. You hang out at the mall. You buy expensive things at the mall.
Yeah,
you want to walk around the mall and show off your expensive things. You want.
That's one thing about they love to show off their wealth. That is a thing.
Well, yeah,
that is a thing.
And in the Gulf states for sure. But yeah, that was my first time on the ground there. But yeah, and actually, like a lot of the work that I did Middle East wise around Iraq and Syria, a lot of it was actually remotely. Because I ended up in a position where I knew people on the ground, and when I was working at War is Boring still, a friend of mine, Machete Roberts, a former British military paratrooper turned really talented photojournalist, was out there, and he was working actually before ISIS like started like seizing territory, or I think they'd seized like Fallujah by that point, but they hadn't like crushed into like Mosul and like all that kind of stuff yet. That hadn't happened yet. Or maybe no. Okay, again, like that had happened. They hadn't crossed the lines to take the Yazidis yet. That hadn't happened, but things were kind of going nuts. But he was out there doing a photo project on unexploded ordnance, actually, like all the stuff that Saddam had left, and like the efforts to get rid of Saddam's mines. And we were talking like we should get like a photo essay published. This is really good. But then like when ISIS broke the lines and started going into Sinjar and like the Christian communities, and like you had that new influx of refugees coming into Kurdistan, he leapt into action, and like he didn't really have anybody that he was working for at that moment, and said like, hey, I can get on the ground now. I'm not a very good writer, but I can take photos and I can send you notes. And I told David Axe, my editor, like, we got a guy on the ground right now, and like, yeah, like that, like he, like if he sends notes, I can write up his copy for him, like, and we can turn this into like a coherent article. And he's like, yeah, do it. Like, so I started working with him. And then like shortly after that, we, through another connection, like one of our readers was friends with a Kurdish journalist, Begir Sadallah. And he'd been doing like, he'd been working as a fixer for people, but he also was like posting things on Facebook, like his own stuff. And like this other guy said, like, you should talk to these War is Boring guys. Like you should be getting directly compensated for that. I mean, and he was in like Kurdish media, but like, you know, you should have a outlet out here. And yeah, he came on to a similar thing where like he wasn't a bad writer, but his English at that point was not, it required more editing than just like, so I would be kind of like his pre-editor. And so I ended up working with him, and so it was him and Matt were my guys on the ground, and it was my job to supervise them, edit their copy up to a degree that it was good enough to go to an editor.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would go to David or whoever was the editor that day. And I was working with them and coordinating, you know, how we get them going, where they need to go, and what's going on the ground. So I did that for close to a year.
Mm.
I think, yeah, I was there. I think I was doing it long enough that we got to the point where I was editing them. No, definitely I was when the Kurds took Mount Sinjar back. And, you know, didn't necessarily end the genocide. Like the search for missing Yazidis still is ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of how I did that. I got hooked into that. And really it came to a point where, you know, I was looking at like, I'm like, I'm going to go, like, there were a lot of things that were going on with me personally. I'm like, I want to get out of here for a bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to go visit my friend in Germany. And then like, you know what? I'm going to go to Iraq. Cause like I know a lot of people on the ground there, like Viger. And I stayed with my friend Paul Eden, who also wrote stuff for War is Boring and who I knew. And I just like reached out to him like, hey, you got a spare couch?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, no, I'm better than that. I got a spare bedroom. Like, you know, like, so I went down there, went on the ground and just started, you know, sending stories back.
Yeah. As a, you know, starting off in that world, you know, I see your Ernie Pyle Legacy Foundation hat on.
Yep.
And, you know, if you're somebody that's been inspired by Ernie Pyle, he's one of the three people that I really point to. For me, my big three are Ernie Pyle, Anthony Bourdain, and Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway, the reporter, more so than the novelist. I mean, I've read his novels, but like the
interesting
reporting is something that I identify with because he was actually a little bit of a non-traditional news reporter. He'd already had success as an author, and it was I identify with some of the way he approached things in a more non-traditional way. Anyway, I digress.
Sure.
If you're somebody that's inspired by Ernie Pyle, you're looking at Iraq and what's going on there is like, well, if I'm going to do this journalism thing, then I need to go where the thing is happening, right? Like, well, you know, you talk to a guy like Sebastian Junger. He did the same thing when he got into journalism in the 90s. He's like, hey, where's it go? Well, Africa, I guess that's where I go. Jump in the, fly into some country in Africa that's got shit going on and jump in the nearest Hilux and, hey, take me to the front lines, right? Like, and maybe not quite as brazen, but that's essentially what you did is like, okay, I know a few people there. This is where the stuff is going on. And
well, interestingly though, the time when I actually went though, like that was when there was a real kind of feeling that there wasn't stuff going on anymore. And that was part of what attracted me to it because this was after, ISIS had been driven out of Raqqa, they're not in any of the major population centers anymore. But it seemed like there was still a lot going on.
Like 2017, 18?
No, 19.
19?
This is 19. Yeah.
Okay.
So like that's when I went back because I was working kind of remote with some of these, like I was doing the War is Boring thing and I was working with, people like I was supervising guys that were on the ground for a bit. And then I was doing other things. And then I was working on these comic projects for a while.
Let's hold one of these up here.
Yeah. Machete
Squad and
The Stand.
The Stand.
That was for the U.S. Naval Institute. And we got contracted to kind of like do some of that. Like one of those is one that I basically kind of ghost wrote for combat medic Brent Dulac, and the other one is I ended up continuing a series of like shorts about Afghanistan that David Axe had started, and I took over kind of, and they're nonfiction stuff. All kind of like illustrated stories based on the stories of people who lived them. But yeah, by the time that like that wrapped up, like that project wrapped up, all these other things wrapped up, and I'd been also working for Playboy a little bit, working for various things, freelancing, and just kind of like, I want to just get out there finally because, I've been working with all these people remotely. I've been interviewing refugees from this part of the world, talk to veterans all the time. Like I've interviewed Green Berets and Navy SEALs and all these guys. And like, it's one of those things where like, and I think this is very common for people. Like the moment you go, and particularly I think for a lot of freelancers, because you look at it, it's just like, oh no, that's that thing that other people do. They get to do that. Like they have like, but like there's always just that moment that tips you over. It's like you just got to go.
I mean, if you go in the sort of the front door, it's like you need to go get a job at a national publication. So you have the budget to send people abroad. And,
right.
And then you got to do your time at one desk after another.
However, though,
maybe 10, 15 years into your career, you'll get the chance to go do a foreign embed.
However, though, I will say this too, before anybody thinks that means they should just grab a ticket. Because the thing is, why it worked is because I had been an editor with these guys. I knew these people, and they had families that could help me out when I was there. They could point me around. I did not just get a ticket and walk off the airport in Erbil and think that things were going to be okay. I had a support network in place, even though I was a freelancer. I had people there. I had people who I knew had my back. Mm-hmm. When I went into Syria, I did not really have that, but like a friend of a Kurdish friend of a friend.
The first thing that you did either, though.
No,
you had worked your way up to going into Syria in the way that you did.
Right. And I would not have worked with the people I worked with in Syria had they not been vouched for by Kurdish people that I already knew.
Yep.
Like you do not walk into these places. Do not walk into these places alone.
Brought it up before, but like these people who, as soon as Ukraine popped off, or after October 7th, of like, oh, I got to get to Israel. Like, dude, you're not even a journalist. Like, what are you talking about? You have no idea. Even if you have like a military background, it's like I even use myself as an example of I deployed 5 times in the military. I was an Army Ranger. All these other things. My first conflict reporting that I did was the Standing Rock oil pipeline in my own backyard, essentially, right? North Dakota, right? Like, and I worked my way up from there.
Yeah. And a place where you knew the landscape, you knew the land, you knew
had
things.
Some contacts on the ground, all that sort of stuff. I didn't just leap into reporting in Afghanistan or anything like that. I mean, yes, what was my, did I have a very abbreviated timeline to get to some of those things? Yes, but that's where I will say, hey, I did have experience in these places in the military that can help. It's not irrelevant, but it also doesn't qualify you to just immediately jump in or expect that editors are going to trust you because, and again, I brought this up before, it's not even just a safety thing. It's also, hey, do we trust you enough as a reporter to not get things wrong? Because there's examples of guys who've gone in and dubbed themselves reporters and they start reporting on rumors from the hotel lobby bar that all the reporters are hanging out at.
Yeah.
It's in every country.
And and you think you're going to get the scoop by reporting it before them, but they were talking about it because it was a rumor.
Yeah.
They were comparing notes to see if there's something.
They're bullshitting about it at the hotel lobby bar for a reason.
Yeah. There's a reason why they haven't written that yet.
These are things that young reporters or aspiring journalists, whatever, somebody that is inspired by Hemingway or Ernie Pyle or more contemporary people, you got to know that it's a thing that you've got to. Conflict reporting is varsity level reporting, in my opinion. Maybe there's other journalists out there that would see it in a different way, but I do think it is something. It's the highest stakes.
I do see it a little bit in a different way in terms of varsity. Well, I mean, there's different kinds of reporting, though. I think
the DC bureau chief for the New York Times, that's high stakes reporting too, but high stakes in a different way. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, I think it's also like there's football and there's baseball. Mm-hmm. So exactly. Like in terms of like what you're looking at, because like really when I look at like what's like reporting where I look at like wow is like when people can really do like data reporting or like people who do data reporting these days, those people are like impress the hell out of me. I got to have dinner and drinks with 2 of my former colleagues that I worked with at Civil Beat when I was down in Boston. And I might have mentioned that even earlier here, but one of them, Union Jung, she works at the Globe doing data stuff. And like, it's incredible what she does. And I'm like, you are so much smarter than me.
Data reporters, and then I look at a guy like Jason Leopold, who's like a FOIA ninja.
Oh yeah,
and you're like, oh my gosh, if I had half the skills that you do on some of this stuff, like there are some of the niche reporting that like medical reporters or tech reporters.
Yeah, but then again, like I say that, but then like Yuyan looks at like me and like my deep knowledge of like some of these like. I remember when I was in Hawaii, like 2 helicopters flew overhead, like military ones. She's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "It's the Marines."
Yeah,
and she's like, "Wow, you just like right away, you know that." I'm like,
"That's one of the easy. That's one of the easy ones because you can tell by the type of helicopter,
and color." Oh, yeah. And I told her how I could know. Like, well, it's like they're gray.
Yep,
they're going that way. And they're sea stallions.
Yeah.
So like that they're
Army doesn't have sea stallions.
No.
Yeah.
But no, she doesn't know any of that. But like, but why would she? So
no, exactly. Yeah. I don't say that to belittle her.
Obviously not. But that's an example of that. And also like, my willingness to go into places that have been dangerous, where like a lot of people that are colleagues
at a minimum uncomfortable.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, there's dangerous places that are very comfortable. That would be my experience in Ukraine. Very comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Very dangerous. And then there's places that are not very dangerous, but very uncomfortable. And that's been my experience in some places in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like there's places where like...
And some places are both.
Well, no, some places are both. But yeah, there are places where there is poverty and there's a story, but like there's not violence. But like, people should go there. But like, no, it's not going to be... Or even like we were talking about ecology stuff. I saw like a short video that somebody was publishing earlier about like what it's really like to film a nature documentary.
Oh,
going out into those swamps to get the shot. Like
I worked with some of those guys before. So I co-hosted this History Channel show back in 2017, and the DP and the BCam guy that were on that, they were both like Nat Geo guys.
Yeah.
And they talked about just like, man, you just go sit in a bush for like 2 weeks being eaten alive by bugs to get this one shot of a tiger like nursing its cubs. Or a lion. Sorry, there's no tigers in Africa.
Right,
a lion,
Yeah.
and things like, and you're just like, it's like being in a sniper hide or something like that, where you're just having to like kind of piss right where you're, lying, and you're sitting there with all this camera equipment day and night, hot, cold, the whole thing, and you just have to have that patience. Same thing for those guys that like go down to Antarctica trying to get a shot of a penguin or a polar bear or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, the patience and the willingness to endure just intensely uncomfortable situations for long periods of time. All the respect in the world.
Yep.
All the respect in the world. It's very different than, again, I kind of look at even my experience in the military. I'm like, man, I mean, I was a ranger. Like we were always stationed on like large airfields and like nice dining halls. Back to air conditioning every day.
So so bring this back even like to how like the Pacific, when we talk about like training out there, jungles, working in places that you don't think you're going to be for very long because you're worried about missiles. So like makeshift places, low profile, moving fast. Like it's hard out there. Like operating in that region is difficult. And also like if you're going to do anything affordable, like when I went to Fiji, like when I got off the boat, I decided to give myself a little bit of time to like stay there, to finish writing some things. And, also like, I'm not going to just like come here and not do anything.
Yeah.
But it was also like I had been doing some of that reporting on my own dime a little bit, so I'm like, I'll stay somewhere real cheap.
Yep.
I'm gonna tell you, if you're thinking about staying at a hostel in Fiji, don't.
Not
visit.
Like a French hostel.
No.
Or
nope. Stay in a hotel.
Yeah.
Or an Airbnb if you can get like a homestay with a local family that'll like feed you and give you directions. Like, do a homestay, do a hotel, don't do a hostel.
Yeah. And this is where your research before you go to a place comes in.
Right. But I got it like, but the thing is, the reality is like most of my research on that had been on fisheries, not what was going on land in Fiji. And like, now I know.
One more thing that I wanted to ask about is, you mentioned you did some reporting for Playboy and specifically in Beirut. Beirut's a place that I don't have a lot of experience, and I'm just curious. Like, you've been sort of, when I've talked to you in the past, you've always been very passionate about, like, Beirut's an awesome place.
It is.
So can you tell me a little bit about your reporting there?
Well, I did one piece, but like, and honestly, like, part of the thing was like, I went to Beirut right after like the first stint in Iraq and Syria that I did with you. We went back there because, like I just wanted to hang out there. Yeah. But I found like, because I'm going to do a story. But like there's like, but if I'm going to hang out there, I can probably do a story. I interviewed Blue Pfeiffer, who is pop star seems not like the right description of like what her music sounds like, but I guess like, anyway, a Lebanese singer who's she's very edgy in terms of like how she does things out there. Like, she's implemented pole dance into her routine. So like, she's like very unafraid of being like kind of overtly transgressive in that kind of conservative culture. So it was an interview and feature that me and Kimberly Westenheiser did. I was
going to ask you who I remember. I felt bad that I couldn't remember her name. But very talented photographer.
Yes. But we interviewed her and did kind of a feature on her, and it ended up kind of like changing over time because of like it fell kind of in the production. We talked to her about her career and kind of things that were going on with, like at that time there had been protests in Iraq, there were protests in Iran, but there were protests in Beirut too for a large variety of reasons around corruption and economic trouble. But like the protests in Beirut were like, looked like Coachella, like everybody, like all these young people going out and like having a party on the street. Like, the mood was jubilant, but it was a reflection of their anger. Though. It was like, they're like, we're not going to work. We're going to party until the rest of you figure out how to run this country. It was kind of like what they were telling them.
A much more fun version of Occupy Wall Street.
Right. And it ended up becoming, less fun over time. But, we talked to her there. But I ended up also talking to her kind of when, because this piece ended up dropping kind of right after the pandemic. And also like, but it also happened right before that explosion in the port. Because me and Matthew Galt, our podcast, and actually it used to be War College. We rebranded it to Angry Planet. Our first episode under the rebrand was me calling her up to like talk about like, hey, how's it going over there? And she had such spirit, and like I think she's just a really courageous and creative person. This is actually really funny because in retrospect, she was saying like, yeah, man, like I've worked so hard, and like like we all deserve a break. And then she sang this song, like one of the first ones that she actually did that was in Arabic, and it went super viral, like huge, like everybody saw it, and like people loved it out there, and she started getting like attention. Like the Sex and the City revival, one of her songs is like ambient music in one of the scenes. Like she's really like, ever since like I'm not taking credit for this at all. Like it's all her work.
Let the record reflect that Kevin Knodell is taking credit for this young artist's work.
No, it's a good. It was a good. I'm proud of the profile, and she really loved it. But yeah, like she really has taken off since then, and I'd love to like. I've talked to her once or twice, on social media, mostly just to say like, I saw that's awesome, and like, or just saying
congrats,
like, and then, but also like a very like earnest, like, thank you, how are you, and like, and maybe like a few exchanges, like, are you still in Hawaii? Like, yeah, I'm still in Hawaii, and like, stuff like that. But yeah, I met lots of other people out there, and it's one of these cities that's so dynamic. It's it's sometimes called the Paris of the Middle East. But the way that I would describe it to Americans, I think, Dubai has been described as the Las Vegas of the Middle East. So that makes Beirut the New Orleans of the Middle East, I think, which I think also encompasses that French culture. Because it was, again, like a French colony, Lebanon. So that French, influence is still really there, but it's such a diverse place. You have people of different sects, different religions. You know, you're Christians, you're Shia Muslim, you're Sunni Muslim, you're Druze, and all just kind of trying to make their way through this city. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but like I could say a lot of things about Beirut, but I would like defer to somebody who spent more time in Beirut, because I mostly just went there to drink and party. I didn't do any hard reporting in Beirut.
No, I just think it's an interesting.
But I just want to tell people that city's awesome. The people are awesome, and I'd love to go back, and I would do more like.
I think that's the reporting is like, hey, this place is actually really awesome, and don't overlook Beirut.
I'd like to go back to the Middle East, but like I honestly like going back, like I've done enough conflict reporting in the Middle East. And there are other people who are doing that now. I do want to do, if I go back, like I'd like to go to Kurdistan and write more about like the mountains and like hiking and food and like communities out there. I'm proud of the work that I did reporting on the Peshmerga and the SDF, and I'm we're in a very critical venture for like what the future is going to be for all these people, and I think about it a lot. I watch it closely with a lot of apprehension, because there's a lot of high stakes that'll affect friends of mine and people I care about. But I do want people so badly to see this place beyond the guns and the uniforms, and see the communities out there, their culture and their history, because it's not something to be slept on. We were talking about this, like, I'm not going to tell people like that that Kurdistan is like an easy lift for a place to go vacation, but I would say consider it. Like if you can get like a tour guide, like, because you're not going to speak the language, but there are people there who will do that for you. There are people who will support you like for a couple days. Like, I'll take you up to the mountains, we can hike, and like I can recommend lodging for you. I can pick you up. I can help you get around and give you directions. Most people, like, you can gesture your way through town and like exchange money.
Especially if you're sticking to Erbil, especially in like the Christian part of Erbil is typically the most Western.
In Kawa, yeah.
You're going to feel, as a Westerner, you're going to feel most comfortable in that part of town.
But there's other places, like, and even like,
not exclusively there, but just like, if you're picking a hotel, maybe there you're going to feel more comfortable.
The one time I ever actually stayed in a hotel, because every other time I was, staying with friends and colleagues who let me stay, or I was being hosted and overfed by their families, which I had which can't recommend enough. Like if you can get like in enough to like have dinner at somebody's home out there, you will.
By the way, that goes for any country you go to.
Yeah.
In the Middle East especially.
But the one time I stayed at a hotel, actually, the only time I stayed at a hotel in Iraqi Kurdistan was in Dohuk. It was nice, man. It was like anybody would be comfortable there. Like, you would be so comfortable, and like the rate, like the amount that it cost was actually not that much.
Yep.
Like, you would be. I think a lot of people with your ideas of what this place looks like, you'd be shocked by what was in there, and also you're a drive away from like these incredible mountains, like streams and just like.
Incredible nature.
It's just hard because this is just not what people think of when they think of Iraq, or like, and you can debate again, like, are we in Iraq or are we in Kurdistan? But like, for the purposes of like, I'll add that as just a reporting thing, because I've had to do this on so many issues here. Like, I'm just trying to tell people a factual story that they can learn from. Like, I'm not trying to shove ideas down people's throat.
Form your own opinions.
Yeah, like, form your own opinion. It's a challenge to use the most neutral language, and it's a challenge that's gotten harder. Like, terms that used to be used a lot more, like,
are now politically charged.
Yeah, politically charged. Like illegal immigrant used to just mean a person who does not have legal status. There was no moral like thing necessarily attached to that. But now, like, you have to pick a side: undocumented person or illegal immigrant. And like, as a reporter, that puts you in like a difficult
similar with space, like unhoused people versus homeless.
Right. And it's just like it's hard. So like, when you're reading news and when you're reading these things, like, and sometimes you might assume that somebody's like trying to like, a lot of times, more often, we are just trying to tell you stuff. That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to navigate like a lot of things, and we're trying to be fair. We're trying. It's
well,
it's
and
hard.
I think for a journalist, your first allegiance has to be toward truth, and accuracy, and if you everything else I think should come second to that. And that's where some of these terms, if they are the most accurate term, even if it goes against current cultural trends around that term, I think your first allegiance is towards what is the most accurate word to use.
Well, I mean, I work at a newspaper, so my allegiance is toward the AP style book. But but like
I have a strong preference towards the Oxford comma, and I don't think that the M- is indicative of the use of ChatGPT to write whatever you're doing. I was using it long before, and probably too much.
I agree with both of those statements, though. In the interest of AP compliance, I have to omit the Oxford comma until I get to write my own book.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. It was writing AP style during my day job, and then Chicago as I was putting a book together, and
hard pill to swallow.
Both areas suffered because of it.
Yeah.
I started confusing the two. My brain just is not that complex. But yeah, all that being said, if you can tell a good story, everything else seems to work itself out, and that's definitely where, what you do out there in Hawaii right now, with some very consequential hard news reporting. It's really important stuff. And I'm glad that there's guys like you out there, guys and gals like you out there, doing that reporting. It's not the reason that I came into journalism. I came in looking for the long form feature human interest type story. I never got into the daily. I ended up in daily news. Well, but that's not what motivated me to come in.
Well, honestly, same. But and there are days where I really, the grind does get to me, but on the other end of it, and I don't know if that's going to be my forever job. Like, who knows? But like, I am gratified to know that like I am the first stop for a lot of people, where they need to know what's going on. And as much as I get a lot of hate mail, most of it, a lot of us do more hate mail than, and also
sometimes deserved, sometimes not. For me, I've deserved it a few times.
It's happened. But I'll tell people this, like, if you subscribe to your local paper and you appreciate the work that, like, if you see a byline that you appreciate, send them a nice email every once in a while. I do get those sometimes, and one nice email from somebody buoys me for a week.
I was just gonna say I'll ride that for a week.
Oh yeah, no,
same time frame for me.
Yeah, like that like you feel good. You feel good when that happens, and a lot of us, just with conditions being the way that they are, a lot of us could use a few weeks of good feelings. So like, if you got a chance to compliment somebody whose work you think is good. Do it. Do it as soon and as often as you can, because we all need it.
Yeah. Well, where can people follow your work at?
Well, the Honolulu Star-Advertiser mostly. I did one freelance piece this year.
Are they behind a paywall for people?
They are.
Okay.
But my work also does get frequently reprinted at Stars and Stripes. It has been, actually was even reprinted at a newspaper out here when I went to the Philippines earlier this year. I forget the name of the paper, but I saw that it was a New Hampshire one. So occasionally other places will pick it up. Military.com had been. Military.com, as of a few months ago, is now a very different publication.
Does not have a staff anymore.
Yeah, so I don't know what the future is there, but though maybe without a staff, they'll be reprinting my stuff even more. Who knows? And you can follow me on Instagram at KJK_journo, or typing in my name, it'll probably come up.
And of course, we'll link to all the relevant links.
Of course.
In the description for this episode. Kevin, thanks for coming. Thanks for making the time, coming up to the Granite State here and on your tour day East Coast. It's fantastic to catch up again, and I think the last time that we were in the same room together was Iraq. I want to say, So nice to do it in a frigid subject matter expert studio this fine November day, this fine Veterans Day. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.